order. Good morning and welcome to the March 23rd City Council meeting. We acknowledge we are on the traditional lands of Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, on the homeland of the Métis Nation. City of Regina owes its strength and vibrancy to these lands and the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory, as well as settlers from around the world who continue to be welcomed here and call Regina home. Some members of council and administration will be attending the meeting today through video conferencing. I'd like to remind those. Videos and microphones off. When you go to speak, unmute your microphone and enable your video camera. Thanks very much. I have Councillor Zakidniak, you have a point of order?
Yes, I do. I just want to, for the record, explain what happened at the end of the meeting last night, which was there were 4 of us who attended virtually, and when the vote was called at the end of the meeting last night, the 4 of us were no longer a part of the meeting, and so we were not able to participate in the vote during the meeting. That raises lots of concerns for me in relation to our procedures and our process, and I've had these concerns in many of our processes lately, and so I want it noted for the record about what happened last night. And this entire process has been very chaotic. This is a very important decision that we are making, and for that reason, and there was no attempt, there wasn't a sufficient attempt made to find a meeting date that could work for everyone. Today does not work well for me. I'm trying my best to accommodate this meeting. It does not work well for me, and I'm not alone. There's others who this important decision, we can't be fully present or may have to leave early for this important decision. For that reason.
Thanks, Councillor Zakidniak. If you could wrap up, that would be good.
Right. For that reason and concerns that I've heard from other councillors, I would like to move a tabling motion. This motion was brought forward by Councillor Bresciani, and I don't know if it's ready yet, but there is a tabling motion that we wish to bring forward.
Thank you very much,
I'll
Councillor
just check in with the clerks to see if it's ready.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Zakidniak. Just one moment. I'll just have the clerk respond to the vote count from last night.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, there was a technical problem. I did reach out to the affected councillors last night via text immediately after the vote was taken. I explained and apologized for the glitch. I also explained that based on our count, there were 7 in favor and 1 voting against moving forward with this morning's session, and so therefore, again, no benefit to anybody, but if we have included the 3 votes that were unable to connect, it would have been 7-4. The motion still would have passed. That doesn't in any way mitigate the frustration of the members who were having trouble connecting last night, but procedurally, everything was in order and the vote would have stood.
Thank you. Do we have an understanding for what the technical glitch was?
No, we could, at one point we heard the members, but we could not for some reason connect back with them. Again, we will look into that. Again, I apologize on behalf of my staff and the technical staff. Again, the only reality is it would not have changed the vote.
Thanks very much. Sorry, and are you making a motion? Did you want did you want?
All I have is that she wants to table it. I don't have any other.
Oh, okay. So we don't have any additional, or Ms. Ackerman doesn't have any additional information, but you just want a tabling motion to be put on the floor. Is that correct?
Well, I believe if I can call on Councillor Bresciani, she's been working on one, so there should be a motion somewhere that explains the rationale for tabling.
Okay, so not your motion. You're saying that it's Councillor Bresciani's motion?
If she would like to, if she's ready for it.
Okay, and I would assume you'll second it?
Yes, I would second it.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, you can turn your camera off now as well, Councillor Zakidniak. Councillor Bresciani, do you have a motion ready?
Good morning. Yes, I do. The clerk does have it. I don't know if it's ready, but I would, before it does go up, I would like to just table, I want to table this for one reason, was time that, and I guess if the clerk does have it up, but I do feel that we do need more time, but there's one piece that I think we've missed in this. Now, that is engagement with the tenant. Now, I'm going to ask that. I know we have the process today that we're going to hear from administration or from Ms. Anderson on the information that has come back from the results from the survey. Is that accurate?
Councillor Bresciani, do you want a tabling motion or do you want an amendment to the motion? Because the motion isn't on the floor yet. So did you want to table the reports?
Yes, I do. I do want to table the report, but my point is that I want to table it. Like I would like to hear from the delegation, or from, not the delegation, but from Ms. Anderson as to what the results were, and then I would do a tabling at that time. Is that clear?
Sorry, Councillor Bresciani, do you want the supplemental report in terms of the survey results to be heard first before a tabling a motion?
That's accurate, yes.
Okay, I understand now. Thanks very much. That is probably what's up next on the agenda. So thank you, Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you.
We will now consider item CM 23-5, the proposed priority number 4 Catalyst Project public survey results. Councillor members, I'll just say this is a receive and file item. I'll ask the following introduction from administration, that all questions are held until consideration of item CM 23-6, as this is a supplemental report, and following presentations by administration. Any approvals for action or amending motions to a decision on the subject matter are to be made during the consideration of item CM 23-6. So City Manager Nikki Anderson, I will ask that you please introduce the item.
Through the chair. This morning I will be presenting the results of the survey per the motion that City Council put forward on March the 8th. And that was the motion that administration conduct a public survey and report back to its March 22nd, 2023 meeting on the following: the proposed Catalyst project sequencing, number 4 of the Catalyst Committee recommendation, a multi-purpose event center within the downtown core with a specific location to be determined after a reevaluation of possible locations based on the decision-making matrix. So I will be doing the introduction. We have a slide presentation, and then Mr. Lederhouse will walk through the actual presentation. So when this motion came forward, we went to work, and basically we had one priority. We wanted the results of the survey to provide council with information that you do not already have. Your motion was clear. You wanted to hear more from residents. But that posed a challenge for administration because council, you'd already heard a lot. Council had heard the results of the Catalyst Committee's online community engagement survey. Thousands of residents took part. 9 open-ended questions captured more than 12,000 comments. You've heard from more than 800 residents who attended Catalyst Committee open houses. Council has heard from many delegations who have presented their opinions and answered your questions here in Henry Baker Hall. More delegates were sharing comments yesterday. You've heard from residents who posted to our online Be Heard Regina page. You've heard from residents who've contacted you directly by email and by phone. And you may remember hearing the results of online polling from Real when residents weighed in on the future of the Brandt Centre. So we asked ourselves, what haven't you heard, or what can we do differently to help you make the decision around the possibility of a new multi-purpose event center. So there was one thing that we hadn't done yet, and that was doing a scientific poll. So there had been no survey based on randomly selected participants. So just a little bit of background between an opinion poll and a scientific poll. An opinion poll is what we generally use here at the city, and that's through the Be Heard, where anyone can go online and fill out the survey. A scientific survey is where you take your area that you want to survey. So in this case, it's the city of Regina. You have an equal random sampling from each of the areas. So that's each of the wards. There was 100 randomly selected residents polled through both landline and cell phone. And in general, scientific polls to be relevant, it's commonly agreed upon that you have to have a minimum of 100 respondents, and that if you have a maximum 1,000, that will be accurate. And generally, you don't need more than 10% of the population, but again, once you hit that 1,000 resident number, the improvement past that point is not significant. So really, when we did the mathematically measured opinion of the residents of Regina, the results that we can present as a statistically valid representation of the community is as a whole. We worked with Forum Research, and Mr. Lederhouse will go through and share the results of the scientific poll with you today. One very important note before I proceed: to ensure every resident of Regina had an opportunity to participate, we did deliver the poll in 2 different ways. So we conducted the scientific poll that I've described, which included 1,000 randomly selected participants. And then at the same time, we delivered the same poll online, which was made available to anyone in the community who chose to participate. So with that, I will pass it over for the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Through the chair, I'm pleased to take you through these results today. The scientific poll, as you can see on the screen, was conducted by Forum Research between March 9th and March 19th. 1,000 randomly selected residents were contacted by mobile phone and landline. During council's deliberation related to the survey motion, councillors had expressed some concern that residents in their own wards may not always be appropriately represented in survey results. So to resolve that issue, we ensured that each ward is evenly represented. There are 100 survey participants from each of the city's 10 wards. Again, the results of this scientific poll provide council with a statistically valid measurement of Regina residents' views regarding a new multi-purpose arena. The poll has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.09%, 19 times out of 20. We feel this is new information, as Ms. Anderson mentioned, not previously provided to council through a previous engagement process. We provided each member of council with handouts showing complete results, and for transparency, we wanted to make you aware that we'll be making that information that you have publicly available as well. I'd like to touch now on some of the results to provide you with an overview and to offer some context that I hope you find helpful. Again, I'm not going to be taking you through every single question with this presentation. My goal here is to offer context on selected questions that will help provide you with the context you may need to review the complete results that we provided to you in your package. We'll start with this first result. This is a question we felt was likely of most importance to council based on the motion that was passed 3 weeks ago. The question is abridged for you on the screen, and I will just read the complete question as it was asked of residents, and you can see that complete question in your package as well on page 2. Just so you know what we specifically asked residents over the phone, what was asked of them, it was this question. The city is considering building a new indoor multi-purpose event center in the downtown arena. This facility would have the capacity to host approximately 8,000 people and would be used for a variety of purposes such as sporting events, concerts, and other entertainment events. Which of the following 3 statements best describes your opinion regarding this new multi-purpose indoor event center? The statements were then read to the participant. The order in which they were read was randomized, so they were not read in the same order for every participant. And as you can see, the results show that those who feel the multi-purpose event center is needed and either belongs downtown or does not belong downtown, 64.4%. Not needed, 30.3%. The next question that I'd like to talk just briefly about with you is, again, abbreviated for the presentation on the screen, but the full text of the question asked over the phone was, how much do you agree or disagree with the following statement? A new downtown multi-purpose event center is an important priority for the City of Regina. And you can see here 5 choices provided. And the results, 46.5% would disagree, either somewhat or strongly with that statement. 40.8% agree with that statement that the event center is an important priority for the City of Regina. The context I wanted to add for Council here is that this question was carefully worded, as were all the questions, but this one in particular, asking simply if the resident felt a new downtown arena was a priority for the city. We intentionally left out additional context here to state a priority catalyst project or an economic priority. Some of those topics are covered later in the survey. The intent here was just to allow the resident to consider a city's priorities and then offer their opinion on where a multi-purpose event center may fit in. We felt this kind of question would offer you a better understanding of how residents prioritize a new downtown arena alongside any other priorities that they would feel are important to our city or a city. So a bit of background there. The next question contextualizes the priority of a multi-purpose event center specifically as a Catalyst Committee recommendation. The question is abbreviated on the screen for convenience. It was a long one, and rather than read it to you, I'll just refer to question number, page number 5 in your results package. It's a lengthy question, but it mentions what the other 3 priority projects are. So each resident was made aware of what the other projects were, and that the arena is currently ranked 4th. And the question was then asked, do you feel this ranking was appropriate, correct? Should the event center be ranked at a higher priority, or should the event center be removed from the list of priorities? And again, these choices would have been randomized for each resident participating. You can see the results. 39.7% felt it was the correct ranking. 30.2% responded they would rank it higher on the list, knowing what the other 3 projects were, as we briefly described them. And 30.1% felt that the event center should be removed from the list of priorities. This result was informed by some of the deliberations that we heard as you deliberated the survey motion earlier this month. There was some discussion that we heard about downtown and what other reasons may influence a resident's choice to come downtown or not. We wanted to represent that in the survey. The question we asked was, what would encourage you to visit downtown Regina more often, if anything? And I want it to be clear here when you look at these results. In the scientific poll involving the 1,000 random participants, they were not provided options. They were simply asked, what would encourage you to visit downtown Regina more often? The intent of this question was to capture top of mind. So without prompting them with any options at all, they offered what they felt would encourage them to visit downtown more frequently. If they offered, they were allowed to offer up to, they weren't allowed, they would offer whatever they liked. We captured their first 3 things that they said, and these are the results. As you can see, top of mind responses to this question, more than 20% said more parking, and we go just under 15% for live events, concerts, and entertainment. Improved safety comes in just under 15%, down to free parking, as distinguished from more parking, and then into more shopping opportunities. So again, I just wanted to emphasize here that these were top-of-mind responses. These were not options presented to residents, and I thought you might find this information helpful. We're going to move into the online poll. Those were the results, again, of the scientific poll, where 1,000 residents were contacted at random in our community, ensuring that there were 100 participating from each ward. It was important as well, as Ms. Anderson mentioned, to provide all residents of Regina an opportunity to answer these questions. That's why we made the survey available online as well. So anybody who wanted to participate had the opportunity to do so. More than 8,096 people participated in the online version of the survey, and I'm going to walk you through some of the results now. What we'll do here on these slides is take you back to the results I just shared a moment ago from the scientific poll and show them alongside the results of the online poll. We thought that would be helpful. The scientific poll on the left, again, we've covered that. 64.4% feel an arena is needed. 30.3% felt it was not. On the right, we see a difference. We see 53.1% suggesting it is not needed. 43.8% saying it is in fact needed. I just want to, before I proceed with the next couple of slides comparing these results, just again, a note. It's important to emphasize the difference between the two surveys. They tell two different stories. The scientific poll represents the opinions of the community as a whole with measurable statistical certainty. And the online poll is available to anyone choosing to participate. It's important to remember that these two techniques of engaging residents are only two options available to us among many others when we're engaging with our community. The theory being that the more opportunities we have to engage with residents and the wider variety of engagement tools that we deploy, the better informed council can be making decisions affecting residents. Moving on to the next question. Again, we looked at this result just a moment ago on the scientific poll. The results of the poll, of the scientific poll on the left. On the right, we see that online, a higher percentage of residents do not agree that an event center is an important priority. From 46.5% disagreeing on the scientific poll to 68.5% disagreeing with the online poll. Finally, the comparison of the results for the question about the fourth place ranking of the multipurpose event center among all 4 recommended Catalyst Committee projects. On the left, the scientific poll we took a look at a moment ago. On the right, the online poll. You can see here an increase in the percentage of residents online who want the multipurpose event center removed from the list of Catalyst Committee project priorities. I'll just close the presentation of survey results with final thoughts on the value of the 2 polls, which were conducted simultaneously as we've described. Again, scientific poll, a mathematically measured opinion of the residents of Regina that we can present to you as a statistically valid representation of the community as a whole. In this case, after extensive public consultation on the matter, we conducted this scientific poll to provide you with a new perspective of public opinion that we felt you previously didn't have access to. The online version of the same poll is more broad-based public engagement. It's not a measurement of the opinion of the community as a whole, but it is an opportunity for anybody who chooses to participate to share their opinion. So I'm pleased to have that opportunity to share with you the results of the survey. The complete results are in front of you in your packages. I hope this presentation offered you some context to help you interpret some of those results. We're pleased to take any questions that you may have, and I'm also, I can't see the team's chat, but I do think we have Lauren Bozanoff from Forum Research joining us as well, who can help us with questions about statistics and mathematics and survey methodologies.
Thank you. I was just going to say that, Mr. Leader House. Council Lauren Bozanoff, who performed the scientific poll, is online. Mr. Bozanoff, thanks for joining us this morning. I'm just curious, do you have anything to add prior to questions coming forward?
No, not really. You've seen the survey results from the 2 surveys, and I think they're an accurate reflection of both the city as a whole, the residents as a whole. That's a scientific poll, and also of those who like to participate in these online type surveys.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to receive and file this report before we go? Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli, seconded by Councillor Nelson. Councillor Mancinelli, did you wish to have any questions on the poll itself?
Yeah, maybe one. I got one going. When I'm trying to extrapolate data from what's been presented to me, I try to look at questions that are a little bit locking down to understand who's answering, and if maybe this is like a big shared internet poll to try to sway everything. The 2 that everyone has to answer that have some type of validity is the gender identity and the age. I'm just wondering, if I was to look at census data about gender identity, what would be representative of our city or Canada as a broad spectrum? Do you know that?
Yeah. Through the chair, I think I'll ask Lauren to explain the way we weight, that survey results are weighted to align what is collected with actual census data that tells us more about the demographics of our community as in reality. So, Mr. Bozinoff, if you're able to just offer a bit of insight there.
Yeah, so we take the survey results. We look at especially age and gender to ensure that we have a representative sample. If there is a slight imbalance, we do weight the data, so the data will match exactly the Stats Canada distribution on those two dimensions, the age dimension and the gender dimension.
And I'm just wondering, when you weight the data that way, the online poll, is it representative of our community, our mix of people, or does it look like there might be a couple of groupings that are repeatedly doing the survey or lobbying by the responses and the way it weighs against the broad spectrum?
So it is unscientific, so we don't weight that one because it wouldn't be right to weight it because it's not based on a random sample. You only do the weighting if you have a random sample. So the online one is not weighted.
Okay. I guess that answers my question. It's not balancing out to be totally representative. We knew that going in, but I just was wondering if that gives an indication of how far out of whack it is.
Really, we have the scientific measure. It's sort of the gold standard to look at. And you saw the two results side by side when we looked at the online poll. There is quite a discrepancy between the two. So it is giving you a different information, the online compared to the scientific one.
I don't have experience in surveys. I can see the discrepancy. It gets my attention. I'm asking you for your experience and knowing surveys for how far that discrepancy is, how it compares to other discrepancies. Is it quite a large discrepancy? Have you seen larger? Is it a small discrepancy? Some kind of background data on analyzing that.
I would say it's typical. What it does show is that there was a group of people who feel strongly about this issue. And we know that just from the fact that there was 8,000 completions done, but that group is not representative of the rest of the community.
Thank you. That sounds what I was thinking too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Councillor Stanachek, you're up next.
Thank you. Through the chair, yeah, I had some questions about the demographics too, but I think that you have answered them. One thing I noticed as well, so it's on, it's question 2A, that the neither agree nor disagree 12.7%. It's kind of high. Maybe it's not too high, but I just wanted to get your sense on that. Do you see that as a high number, that there's a lot of people who are kind of taking a neutral position, or is that kind of average, the 12.7%?
If that's to me, let me just say, look at the other way. 90% do have an opinion, which I think is a pretty high measure, actually.
Yeah.
To have 10%, 12% say don't know, you compare the turnout in your elections, it's probably a lot lower than 90%. So it looks pretty high to me, actually.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I think on the next one, it's 14%, so I wasn't sure what would be, sometimes I just see like 5 or 10% are uncertain. Is the sample too small to do crosstabs, or would there be any value in trying to kind of break down the information by ward or anything else like that? I don't know if there'd be any value at all, but I'm asking just to know.
We can certainly do it. A sample of 1,000 is a substantial sample. We can certainly break it down. We don't typically like to break it down beyond a sample size of 100, and that's exactly what we planned for at the ward level. The margin of error will be bigger with the smaller samples, especially with the 100. So whereas the overall margin of error is about 3%, it'll be about 9 or 10% when you look at those subcells that are about 100. But we can certainly do the crosstabs, and we can look at, for example, the different age groups and gender breakouts and so forth.
Okay. I don't know if it would show anything, if it would be of value to us, but I'm just curious because sometimes something shows up and you realize, oh, all of the responses are coming from, the positives are coming from one area or whatever. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stanichuk. Councillor Stevens. Sorry, I apologize.
Through the chair, this is really helpful. So just to be clear, the scientific telephone poll shows greater support for the project, and the online shows more negative responses. I just want to make sure I got that clear, correct?
That's right.
Great. So I'm curious about your opinion on the age breakdown. I understand that, one's scientific and one's whoever's online. The online poll demonstrates that there's a higher response rate amongst younger people. And the younger people that respond have a greater negative attitude towards the arena. But one of the arguments that's being used here is that young people want these kind of complexes, and we have to retain young people. You get my drift here. So should we just simply discard it, or is there something to be said about the online polling results in terms of what a younger demographic is looking for?
So to really answer that question, we would need to do a crosstab by age of the scientific poll, and then we can tell you, we can answer that question of whether they are in fact more or less in favor of the project. We can't tell much from the scientific poll, with the online poll, because it's not a random sample. We don't know where those people came from, and so we can't rely on it for that type of analysis.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up, you said you can't tell where they're coming from. I understand that postal codes were added. Can you maybe explain what you mean by we don't know where they're coming from?
No, I only meant that it was non-random.
Okay.
So we don't know, with the random survey, to be in it, you literally just have to have a phone, either a landline or a cell phone. And when we call, you pick it up and you're in. We don't know how those people, those 8,000, got to the website, what motivated them to do that. They had more motivation than the random sample, because, like I said, the random sample all you had to do was just pick up the phone when it rang. These people had to learn about it. They had to find the URL. They had to go online. They actually had to do the thing and so forth. So we don't know who those people are who were motivated to do that.
If I could request, as imperfect as it is, would you be able to give us a crosstab or a greater analysis of the online poll breakdown based on ward and age demographic?
If we have that information, we can certainly break it out.
That'd be great. Thank you. I'm not sure if this is for you or for administration, but one thing that I find kind of striking in both the scientific and the non-scientific poll, despite the position on any kind of project, there's little interest in coming downtown one way or the other, or it doesn't seem to change all that much. There is some shift, but there's a pretty sizable number of respondents who indicate that it's not going to change their pattern of attending downtown. And this I'm just saying, as the data suggests here, what can we make of that?
Ms. Anderson, do you want to take that one? Or Mr. Boswell? Anybody? Go ahead, Craig.
I think it's important that, like I mentioned in the presentation, we felt that we had heard deliberation among council during the motion, that the concept of what would encourage people to come downtown did come up. So we wanted to represent that in this poll. What to make of it? That's analysis and context that, as you've heard a couple of times already today, that we could probably invest time in providing a little bit more of that interpretation. If council felt that was an important priority for you. The reason you see rather little interpretation here today is we moved through this fairly rapidly to get these results in front of council today, and Ordinarily, there may be a little bit more interpretation available to you at this point in time. And again, if it's your determination you'd like more done, you've heard Mr. Bosanoff suggest that more could be done. So to try to offer you interpretation of what to make of those results about encouraging people to come downtown, I wouldn't have enough analysis in front of me to give you a well-informed opinion of that.
Ms. Anderson?
Through the chair, I think though, personally, the one thing that I found interesting, and this is actually both from working downtown and living central, is what I would respectfully say a misconception about parking downtown. So, you know, when you see the one poll, and I don't have it in front of me, but if you add the two, that there should be more parking and there should be free parking, that was significantly the number one barrier to coming downtown. So I would suggest that even taking all of this catalyst, you know, there's something frankly just about the education of our current downtown and what we have. And there's much more we need to do to bring more people downtown. But I would say that partially it's on us, the city, it's on Experience Regina, it's on like kind of all of our organizations, I think, to help communicate to residents why they should come downtown, because frankly, the number one barrier that they see, I actually don't believe it's true.
Yeah, 100% agree. So through the chair, I think the analysis is worth the time, because this is the billion-dollar question, or the $500 million question. We want people to come to the downtown. So actually the only real data point that matters in the long term is what would change patterns of behavior and activate the downtown. And that then has to inform what do we invest in the downtown. So if an arena, which is one of the most expensive projects, isn't going to shift behavior, then we really need to dig into what will. So it's not a question for now, but I think for the long term. And I appreciate this information. What can administration say about how the need for greater public safety and the social issues are identified there? So what is your take on some of the data? You mentioned parking, which will never go away as an issue. What do you take away from those priorities that people reference as what prevents people from coming to the downtown?
Through the chair, sorry, can you ask that a different way? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
what you're
sure.
asking.
I'm working on the fly here with the report.
No worries. I just want to make sure.
So, to the questions in both the scientific and the non-scientific poll, what would encourage you to visit downtown Regina more often? Safety is raised as an issue, right? Or perception of safety among other activities or investments that we should make. So if you're prioritizing projects and funding, if you look at what would make you go downtown, what's your response to how the city should invest money to activate our downtown communities, just based on these two surveys?
Through the chair, I think I would never make the decision just based on surveys, whether they're scientific or poll surveys. And I don't think it's one thing, listening to everyone and seeing all the work that's already been done. I think that you have to invest in a multitude of initiatives to actually, help improve the vibrancy of our downtown. So I think it's both, whether it's the scientific poll or the opinion poll, it is what people think right now. And I think we take that information and, look at it through all of the other things that we have. And I think I've heard it said multiple times that there's not one thing, not one single sole investment that will absolutely turn it from not vibrant to vibrant, so.
Great, thank you, appreciate this.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Nelson.
So what really stuck out to me here in the scientific poll was 30.3 not needed and 69.7 needed. Nobody really can agree on just the downtown. And I've talked lots about this with business people. It's maybe consider this more of the greater downtown area and consider it more than just the downtown. What do you have to say about that, Ms. Anderson, through the chair?
About Councillor Nelson, you're asking about the split, the 34 to
Yeah.
the 30 for needed
For needed and not
and
needed.
downtown needed, not
By the
downtown.
scientific poll result. Like, I'm leaning more towards the scientific poll results we were here, because it's more than just somebody and their 10 friends picking up the phone 20 times and doing the survey. This is actually going to somebody's house. So does this not bear a lot of weight on the results of this survey? Like, am I correct in reading it that way? That's how I feel. But just would like more of your opinion on that, if you don't mind, through the chair, or Mr. Leaderhouse's opinion.
Through the chair, are you asking specifically about the split between downtown and not downtown?
No, needed and not needed, that split there in the scientific poll results.
And so you're asking me,
I'm just trying to figure out, I personally am looking at the scientific poll results as having a lot more weight than the online, because of the way that the online can go. And I've seen it with people, they've told me that they've phoned in 20 times over the same thing. So that's.
through the chair, thank you, I
Thanks, yeah.
apologize, I didn't
No, no,
understand your
no, that's
question.
fine, that's
So
fine.
I think what I would say is both polls have validity. We use the Be Heard, frankly, very, very often. I think there needs to, though, be understanding of what the difference is. So what I heard from council when I asked the question in our initial meeting about why are you asking administration to do another poll? When I look at all of the work that the Catalyst Committee has already done, the surveys that have been done, why are you wanting another poll? And I think that what I heard here and what I heard in some individual conversations was, I don't know that my ward got heard. The Be Heard is skewed as far as, frankly, who calls in, and you're right, I know that the polling company took great strides to do the postal codes, the IP addresses, but if I'm very passionate, and that can be in a positive way, or whether I'm for something or against it, can I take it from my laptop? Can I go to the library and take it again? Can I take it from my home computer? Yes. And so I would say it depends on what you actually want to hear. And that's why we tried to really make sure you understood the difference between the two polls. If your question is, I want to know what the average resident in Regina, equally represented in each ward, thinks, you're going to pay more attention to the results of the scientific poll. If you want to know, for those that have filled out the survey, because they're obviously more invested from a very proactive, they logged onto the computer, they did the survey, so they're more invested one way or another. And so you're going to end up with different results. And so again, I will never say that, this one is absolutely the one you should always look at, and it completely discounts this one. It's just really important to understand the difference in that one is the equal representation of the average resident of Regina in each ward versus people proactively going online and filling out the survey. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Through the chair, I might add that typically speaking, when you're looking at an online poll where we invite any resident of Regina to participate, generally you might also see supporting engagement as well. That poll may include, for example, an open-ended question where people would have an opportunity to express more detail about their concern. There might have been an open house or some sort of public virtual engagement session that would add some context to some of that polling that we would do. And a lot of that had been previously been provided through other engagement sessions. So I think what's important here to note is that, you're not generally going to see just an online poll as the only piece of our public engagement very often. For the case of this, we conducted a scientific poll, and to ensure it was also made available to all residents of Regina, we made the same poll available online to anybody who would like to participate, and then we delivered those results to you. And they should be taken in context with the other engagement that's previously been conducted. So my point here is that normally you would find, along with that online poll, there might be a little more supporting information as part of our best practices with public engagement. In this case, that supporting information is the previously undertaken engagement. So to look at this specific online poll as something standalone wouldn't be the best approach to it. So I hope that offers a little bit more context.
It does, and when we heard the business community yesterday and the Chamber of Commerce, that's who represents our business community. Those people spoke loudly to this and that. Now, I just want to touch base on the online poll, because I'll tell you, you all know my drive for that water slide. I would have filled that survey out 10 million times with 10 million of my friends to make sure I got the results I wanted. So that's where I'm sitting with that, because I know what I would have went through to get that to go through yesterday, and I know some people are like that, but that doesn't represent the vast majority of all of us. Parking, we talk about parking as being the can't do. My God, so we have these parking spots downtown, and I know from my experience, if I can't find a parking spot, a metered parking spot right in front of the building I want to get into, that's when I say there's no damn parking downtown. And it's perception. Safety, I'm going to tell you a little story. I left my car downtown with the doors open because I'm forgetful, with my laptop computer on my seat. Guess what? Picked up the car the next day, nothing was touched. So safety, I have never felt unsafe going downtown. Personally, I have walked down there with my children when they were little. I've never felt unsafe, and it's perception on that. And so I'll go to bat on the safety and the parking for downtown any day long with anybody. I just really believe that we really need to listen to the Chamber of Commerce yesterday. I really believe that we need to listen to the scientific poll. I think this is very, very accurate and such a great thing. Like, I just compliment you guys so much for this. This was awesome in the short amount of time. So that's where I'm going to leave this. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks very much, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor. Question to Mr. Buzinoff about if we are trying to understand how the city feels about new event center, what is this data telling us?
Actually, the data is pretty clear. I would only rely on the scientific poll for that, because you've asked what is the city's feeling on something, and you can see that in the very first slide. It kind of summarizes everything that they do feel that it's needed. By a 2-to-1 margin, 64 to 30%, with only 5% not having an opinion, which is very, very, very low. Number of people who don't have an opinion on this issue. So it tells me the city is really engaged in this issue, that everyone's aware of it, and just about everyone has an opinion on it.
Thank you. I may continue. Okay, on page 17, what would encourage you to visit downtown Regina more often, if not? And if you look at how from top, improved safety, parking, and then it kind of jumps back and forth. We've heard yesterday that we have about 700 plus spaces downtown after 6 or 5:30. So when we're asking folks about how they feel, do they go downtown or not? If questions asked of me, I would probably have a difficulty answering that question truthfully or really knowing what is it that I want, especially as we go from the years up to now, what we've done with downtown or not, we didn't do downtown. And the years where we put everything to the suburbs and we moved everything out, moved the theater out, moved the university out. We've done all that, we did all that moving out. So I don't know if I would be, really knowing exactly what is that keeps me away or brings me in. Safety, I would say, as we're hearing about safety, maybe the parking lots or some surface parking lots are not in a specific location, but when I look at other cities, so let's just look at Winnipeg, for instance, and it's right downtown. And you talk about no parking, there's a lot of parking there. Same with us, there's a lot of parking. So I'm not sure how would I understand that page 17 when you have so many different things in here, they kind of duplicate themselves, some want, some don't. So you're looking at free parking and then more parking. How would I understand that from the survey of what, did you get any more detail or was just a specific yes or no on those questions, especially on page 17?
Councillor Findura, page 17, that's the online survey. You're asking a question about the online
Yes.
or the scientific, just the online
The
survey?
online-
So
online survey.
that, do you want that to go, where would you like that question to go?
Whoever can answer the online.
All right, it's open for folks to decide who to answer.
Yeah. Through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to add some clarity to this particular question. It's unique. As I mentioned on the scientific poll online, we asked residents what would encourage them to come downtown more often, and we provided no choices. We wanted to know top of mind, what would they say? And I shared those results with you, suggesting more parking was number one amongst more entertainment options. For the online version of the poll, we faced a choice. It's difficult to capture that top of mind question online without an open-ended question where people can type in anything they like. And while that's perfectly fair, again, our timelines weren't providing us we didn't have the opportunity to collect 8,000 open-ended questions and then get through them in a way that would be of value to you. So we came up with, nor did we want to take the question off the online survey. We wanted those surveys to be as similar as possible. So we came up with an option. We came up with a list of what you see on these results and provided all 25 or 24 of these options to residents online and asked them to pick their top three. Now that's not the best approach, but it is the approach that provides the most similar experience between the scientific poll and the online poll. And it was the best approach available to us given the short turnaround time on the project. So to take away from these, that would probably be, in my opinion, the weakest question of this project would be the online version of this question. So, I think its value to you and to council, in my opinion, would be the top of mind results from the scientific poll. The online version of it, with more time, would have been handled differently. So thank you for the opportunity to share that insight. If you're interested in these results, I would encourage you to turn to the scientific results, which will truly give you the top of mind. What came out of residents' brains when we asked them what would encourage you to go downtown more often? Unprompted. This was an attempt to just keep the polls as similar as possible. And again, most likely the weakest question on both polls. So thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you, Councillor Findura. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question on page 2, the scientific poll results. 29.8% it is needed and it belongs downtown. 34.6% it is needed does not belong downtown. Given the margin of error, are those results approximately equal?
Mr. Bosanoff, do you have a comment there?
Yes. So you're asking about the two blue portions on that pie chart, right?
Correct.
Yes, they are within the margin of error. It is about 3%. The margin of error is plus or minus, so that 29% could be 32, and that 34% could be 31.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bresciani, Councillor Zakiniak, or Councillor Moll, do any of you have any questions? now I'm just going to test, can you
No,
hear?
I'm fine.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Regina. I just wanted to test that you guys could hear us. Okay. I do have some questions. There's a question I had about, in terms of the online poll, there was a question asked by Councilor Stevens about the age. Can we validate the age or gender, or can people make that up on an online poll? Can we validate it?
No, it's hard. It's very hard to do that, to validate someone's age.
Okay, thank you. There's a, Mr. Bosanoff, you'd answered a question in terms of the difference from a scientific to the online in terms of looking at information, and you stated the online is not a random sample. How important is it, if council were looking for feedback on a multiplex, how important is having a random sample?
So it's important because if it's a random sample, we then have those margins of error, and I can then answer the question that I did previously about the two blue segments in that pie chart being within the margin of error. There is going to be no margin of error with the online poll. So the numbers, the real numbers, if we knew, if we talked to everyone, could be completely different. So that's the problem with the online poll. It has no margin of error, which means that the numbers could literally be anything, the real numbers.
Thank you, sir. So it was introduced in terms of the scientific poll that 1,000 people is a good sample size.
That's correct. Margin of error 3%.
So if we polled 100,000 people, what would happen to those survey results?
Well, are you polling them scientifically, or are they?
Scientifically, I'm polling them scientifically.
The margin of error would be tiny. It would be very, very small.
So we'd get the same result, that roughly 64% of the population of Regina thinks a multiplex is needed. Okay. This question I think it's for administration. In terms of the visit less often, visit more often, the online poll shows that if there was a multi-event plex downtown, 28% of those surveyed would come downtown less often, with only 20% coming downtown more often. What do you make of that, which is 18 points higher than, or 17 points higher than the phone survey, the scientific survey? What do you make of that online number, that 28.5% said if you build an eventplex downtown, we're not coming downtown?
Through the chair, I'll caution that, of course, that kind of analysis isn't part of the package we're presenting to you, but in response to the question, my initial thought to those results side by side is that it's just another, it draws an underline under the people who are not in favor, who feel arena is not needed. I think this was sort of, I might characterize it as another opportunity, as another way to express their dissatisfaction, was to simply say, given these choices, if that arena goes downtown, I'd go downtown less. So almost as I would offer that the context I would apply to this is that it was those who aren't interested in arena downtown took this question as a bold and underline statement to just double down on that belief, that if they state that they would come downtown less, well, that will certainly emphasize their opinion they're not in support of an arena. So that would be my anecdotal takeaway from that result you've described.
Thank you for that. When I look at the scientific poll, the number that jumps out on me, based upon the previous question I asked you, Mr. Bosanoff, about if we had kept extrapolating this into larger and larger populations within the city, we're going to be plus or minus 3%. The percentages remain reflective. is that 27.7% of those in the scientific poll said that an eventplex would bring them downtown more.
Yeah, we would get the same results.
27.7% of a couple 100,000 people is fantastic. I think our downtown would love that. The other question I want to ask is on the question around economic impact, specifically in the scientific poll. The question was asked, do you believe that an eventplex would have economic impact? Sorry, I don't know what page it's on.
4.
Sorry?
4, I believe.
Thank you. So in the scientific poll, how much do you agree or disagree? And the question is, a new downtown multipurpose event center will have a positive impact on the city of Regina. And I see between somewhat agree and strongly agree, it's sitting at 54.4%. So people believe that people believe that an event center, basically the majority of people believe this will have a positive economic impact. Ms. Anderson, within the Catalyst Committee, and you brought this up before, I think 3 weeks ago when this was referred back to you for these surveys, the argument for why there was a recommendation in the face of an opinion poll which said 60% of people don't want it downtown, or whatever that number was. What was your impression of why the Catalyst Committee unanimously recommending that an eventplex be located in our downtown? What was your understanding of it?
Through the chair, not being part of the Catalyst Committee, but reading through the report, because as I said in my opening, for me, I consider it as a concept plan that administration could refer to for future opportunities. It's 700 pages that analyzed everything from economic impact statements or reports to scans of other municipalities, and also significant public engagement. So I guess I would say, like most of the work and recommendations that we make in administration, the recommendation isn't based on one thing. So I think my point when I was asked the last council to do another engagement initiative, which frankly I'm thankful that we did, because I think the scientific poll adds to it. Just that the Catalyst Committee was a large group of respected individuals who looked at a lot of different, I would say, things to kind of come up with this. And so it wasn't based solely on what public opinion responded.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. There's a question around priorities, and I'm going to ask the question in the scientific poll. There's a question about, is this a priority for the city of Regina? And it's 40-46, and I think with frankly, probably one of the higher percentages of not weighing in on it. Sorry, I'm trying to find that one now too. Important priority for the city of Regina. There it is. And so strongly agree, somewhat agree, sitting at 40 whatever percent, and then 46% saying either somewhat disagree or strongly disagree. And then the next question asks, do you agree with the ranking that it should be fourth in terms of priorities? And it says 40% it's in exactly the right place, and 30% are saying it should be ranked higher priority. Can administration or Mr. Bosnoff reconcile those two things to me? Because if, in my mind, if it's not a priority to 50% of the people, then 50% of the people would have said it should be removed from the priority list. Do you have any insight into that?
Through the chair, I think the context of the question is why we included the different questions. I would suggest that when taken in the context of just the Catalyst Committee recommendations, and should it be a higher priority or removed from the list, I think that's a very specific question that begins with narrowing the scope to just the recommendations of the Catalyst Committee. So I think for that reason, this would be more of a standalone question. So if you're asking how to reconcile the priority question with the other priority question related to the fourth place ranking, I would suggest they're quite different questions, and with one much more focused on the Catalyst Committee work, and the other much more broadly focused on residents' perspectives of a city's priorities overall. So that's how I would reconcile them, and I think I wouldn't try to work the data to try and cross-reference to figure out which percentage of which answer can be transposed between the two. I think they're just very different questions.
Thank you, Mr. Leaderhouse. So just to test then, my understanding is when we did civic engagement survey for budget last year, and we said, what are the priorities? And roads and streets and snow removal and garbage are rec facilities, the 1, 2, and 3, those continue to those are your top priorities. Is that in reference? One is specific to the project list and one is specific, kind of more about ongoing operations.
Through the chair, I would suggest question 2A was designed to give those who felt all of those priorities belong in the same bucket the opportunity to weigh in with that response on question 2A, just as a priority. What you feel your city should be focused on. Where does Arena fit in comparison to everything you feel the city should be delivering? And the reason we left that broad is because we get more specific with the other questions, where now we're talking as a priority from the Catalyst Committee, as a priority for economic impact. And that's why we asked those questions in different ways, is to try to capture people's different perspectives.
Excellent. Mr. Lacey, this may end up being a question for you, sir. Does building an aquatic center prevent the administration, or actually maybe Ms. Anderson because it's broader, but does building an aquatic center prevent the administration from getting better at operations? Whether that be snow removal, park scheduling, fleet maintenance, does building an aquatic center prevent the city from getting better at its other priorities?
Through you, Mayor Masters, no, it doesn't. I think all of the business lines and the activities the city is involved in, we have an ongoing focus of getting better, being more efficient, providing better customer service.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Mr. Leaderhouse, if you had to sum up, actually, Ms. Anderson as well, or Mr. Bosanoff, if you had to sum up the scientific survey when it was specific from council that they were focused in on a multi-event plex, concerned with how the city was feeling about it, what would your summation be? Mr. Bosanoff, why don't you go first?
So I would look at the scientific poll, so that's representative of the city. And really the very first slide you saw today with the numbers, that pie chart, kind of summarizes where everyone feels about this issue. 2/3 want it, 1/3 don't. Among those 2/3 who are in favor, they're split almost evenly in terms of the location.
Thank you. Mr. Leaderhouse or Ms. Anderson?
Through the chair, I would offer the same summary. I would suggest that after hearing council's deliberation leading up to the motion 3 weeks ago, what you just described, Mayor, how are the residents feeling about this? It became fairly clear fairly quickly that what was missing was a scientific poll based, looking back at much public engagement. And that's what we delivered, was a scientific poll to represent the mathematically measurable, statistically valid opinion of the community. And you've got the results. And that, to me, was the one piece that was missing from the rest of the public engagement, which shouldn't be discounted, obviously, but you've got now this new tool, this new instrument to help inform your opinion. That would be my summary.
Through the chair, nothing more to offer. It clearly showed 2/3 wanting, 1/3 not, split with location, which differed from the public opinion polls, and we've gone through and explained the why.
Thank you. Apologies, I have to say that again. This may be you because we've been working on an aquatic center longer, but the 2019 and 2009 master rec plans, when it was recommending that aquatic center be the first thing that we invest in, I believe the poll was 55% of those polled believe it was a priority for the city of Regina. I believe that's in the master plan. Is that a scientific poll, or? Ms. Shaley, do you want to invite her up? Ms. Shaley, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I believe the poll you're referring to was one that was scientific with a statistically significant sample. I don't recall the exact percentage, but I believe your recollection is accurate.
Close. It was close. It was
Yeah.
in the 50s, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's fascinating. Okay. I guess the last question I have for you is that I think clearly the sentiment of the city as a whole says we believe in replacement of a multiplex event center. I believe the sentiment is closely split, with slightly more saying not downtown. I believe it says that 54+% say we understand there's economic impact. We're trying to have economic impact in our downtown, which leads to the conclusion that the decision before council then would be to focus in on where do you want to gain the most economic impact if you believe in your downtown, and to Councillor Nelson's point, greater downtown, as the case may be. But if you're trying to have economic impact, if you're trying to revitalize, it would seem that the majority of the residents of the city of Regina understands why we would make a decision about where it goes based upon economic impact. Would that be fair, Ms. Sanderson? You have to actually answer because
Through the chair, yes.
people can't hear you. People can't hear you nodding. Thanks very much. Councillor Mancinelli, before you close off, I believe Councillor Bresciani, did you have a question?
My question was asked. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Mancinelli, in terms of, oh, I apologize.
In the exchange with Councillor Stevens, he did ask about crosstabs. So I just want to clarify whether or not is that going to come to us further?
Sorry, just 1 minute. Mr. Bosanoff, actually, in follow-up to Councillor Stanachek asking the question about crosstabs, can you explain for the record what crosstab analysis means?
Sure, it's just a breakdown of the data. So typically the gender breakdown would be, approximately half men, half women, and a binary or non-binary, I should say, group. So there we can look at how men answered, how women answered, how the non-binary answered each of the questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Councillor Stanachek, I would suggest this is a receive and file, so if there's a
Okay.
motion that comes after this once the report's on the floor, that's probably the appropriate time, I think. 'Cause
Okay.
Is that okay? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
okay.
We can
And
have
I think
debate.
that
If we're
in
looking
terms
for
of-
more information, then that would be a vote of council in terms
Okay.
of putting administration to further work.
All right.
For what reason? Thank you. Mr. Bosanoff, I'll thank you very much for your presentation. Although, hang on, sorry, I'm not going to let you go because Councillor Mancinelli actually gets to close off debate if he likes.
Sure. Maybe I will pose one more question. When I'm examining the information presented to me today, the scientific poll reads to me as something that's representative of my ward as a whole, non-politically motivated, just people's opinions, how it might be. The scientific poll, that is. The online poll reads to me as people who are very entwined with municipal politics, very politically motivated, and very motivated by the decisions of the city. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. I guess in my closing remarks, I'm going to be a really crappy politician. I have to go with what's been presented to me for logical scientific data. I'll be hated across social media avenues, but I'm not a very good politician anyway. So thank you for the information. Thank you for taking the time to explain the breakdown to me. And that's all I have to say today on this matter.
Thanks very much, Councillor Messi. Thank you very much, Mr. Bosanoff, for attending with us today. But we appreciate your time. I know you were watching last night as well, or waiting by the phone, so we appreciate it. Hopefully not till 1 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks. Bye, everyone.
Okay, council debate's been closed off. We'll have a receive and file motion on the floor. Clerks, I'll ask you to call the vote.
Sikidniak in favor.
Bresciani in favor.
Counselor Moll in favor.
Clerk, can I do a roll call?
Sure, Mayor Masters. I'll begin with Councillor Stevens, please. In favor of the receive and file.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
I have in favors from Councillors Sikidniak, Bresciani, and Moll that have been received verbally. Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Nelson.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Those in favor are 10 Mayor Masters. Councillor LeBlanc has temporarily left the meeting. Motion carries 10-0.
Thank you to the clerks. One moment. Thank you. We'll now consider item CM 23-6, the Catalyst Committee report. I'll call upon the city clerk to give an explanation of procedure and background. Councillor Hawkins, I see your light on. I'll go to you for the motion. Procedure and background for this item, after which I'll ask for a member of admin to introduce the report.
Mayor Masters, this report now is before council. The receive and file on the previous item respecting the survey results has been considered. So now council will be considering this report in its entirety after having heard the presentation from the city manager with respect to that.
Councillor Hawkins, your light is on. Did you want to make a motion?
I'd like to move the motion, the recommendation.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Okay, administration, I think there's some introduction here. Is that, I'm actually looking to administration, is that correct? Do you have any introductory remarks that you'd like to make? All right, then, we have a motion and a seconder, so I guess Councillor Bresciani, I'll move to you after Councillor Hawkins introduces it, because I believe you would want to, you've indicated you'd like to table, so we'll go from there. So Councillor Hawkins, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We heard excellent feedback yesterday from engaged citizens. We also have had excellent feedback, particularly the scientific feedback, I think, this morning. I just want to set the stage a little bit. First of all, I wrote down the following words when people described the downtown: struggling, eroding, declining, shrinking. Those are not positive words. Those are words which suggest a serious problem. They're words that confirm what we know. We've had population decline in our downtown, even though we were hoping to increase the population by 10%. We know that the oldest demographic in the city is in the downtown, and we know that that is of real concern because of the work of EDR in pointing out that the population that is really, as they said, lifting the load is a population between 20 and 40, 45 years old, and we are falling short on that. We heard that approximately the loss of assessed value, property value, recently has been $500 million, 500 million. We also heard that we have serious competitors, Halifax. And I just put out about Halifax, it made the national news 2 nights ago with a very striking display of cranes in the air and a very positive, upbeat feel with where that city was going. London with a downtown arena and the description of how that arena had increased the vibrant nature of the downtown. And Saskatoon, where we know that they are moving, they're actually a living experiment. That arena way out the outskirts, and they're moving it downtown. So we have a problem. We know that the Catalyst Committee was set up to examine whether or not several major projects, such as a pool, an arena, a new library, and several other projects, could help, not the full magic bullet, but could help with these kinds of problems that we're seeing with our downtown. In a word, as the committee's name described, catalyze the downtown or activate the downtown. We heard from the delegates last evening that it could. It could because it would improve the assessed value of land downtown. 1% of the land downtown provides 9% of the city's tax revenues. You improve the assessed value of the land downtown. You improve the commercial tax revenues from the downtown. And quite bluntly, you reduce the need to increase property taxes outside the downtown area. And that is an answer to people in the suburbs who say, I don't care about the downtown. Do you care about keeping your property taxes low? The answer is yes. We also heard, and I think this is important, that safety is either a real or a perceived problem in our downtown. Personally, I hear that every day, especially from women. And we know that the way to deal with safety is not just through more and more policing. I'm sure that Chief Bray would agree that that's not the only answer. The answer is to get people active downtown, get lights on in the downtown. These catalyst projects, and in particular, I want to say, an arena would do that. We heard about placemaking downtown and the importance of the look of our downtown. And Roseanne Hill Blaisdell talked about the face of our city being the downtown. All of that is about pride in our city, but it's about tourism as well. When someone comes to visit Regina, we want them to be taken with their friends downtown. We know this is important for catalyst projects. Economic activity, it'll attract investment downtown. But one of the most striking things that I heard on the Catalyst Committee was a very senior head office leader in this community tell the Catalyst Committee, look, unless you have a downtown that will attract and engage people, particularly people in the sticky age group between 20 and 45, I can't attract the people I need to work in my industry, and if I can't do that, my board will tell me to start looking around for another place for a head office. Just a couple more points. We heard at one point, somebody said, and I was particularly sensitive to this, old men plant trees even though they know they will never sit under those trees. I want to say that old men build downtowns to keep their children and their grandchildren in the city. So to those of us who are my age and older, I say, before you're quick to trash the idea of activating the downtown because you want a quiet life, ask yourself, do you want your children and your grandchildren to be around you as you age? Finally, we heard a statement that I believe is true, and I've lived in many places. There are no great cities that have hollowed out downtowns. If Regina wants to do better, if it wants to be a city that is considered to be a good city or a great city, it has to pay attention to its downtown. I believe that the Catalyst Committee identified all of this. I believe that they made important recommendations with respect to the trail, with respect to the pool, but I especially want to say, with respect to the multi-purpose event center within the downtown core, and everything I heard in the scientific survey this morning confirmed that belief. I want to thank those citizen volunteers who served on the Catalyst Committee. I want to thank Mr. Reed and his staff for the outstanding contribution which Rio made in putting together a report that I believe is will be considered to be one of the defining reports of the City of Regina. And I'd ask Council to support its recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Council, we are at a mandatory break, 10:31. I'll see you back here at 10:46. Welcome back, council. I got three, yeah, I got quorum. Councillor Bresciani, I have Councillor Stevens and then Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Stevens, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I just want to start with an amendment. And just to be clear, this is on the report in its entirety. I'd signaled that I was going to bring this forward at the executive committee meeting, and Councillor Hawkins and I had an exchange about the appropriateness. Amber has it. And it regards section 4A. So this is a far less interesting part of the report. And the amendment is that administration be directed to report back to City Council by Q3 of 2023 with options and recommendations respecting the establishment of a municipal land development corporation, and that it include the following additional information: mandate terms of reference for the corporation, governance structure, and associated startup and ongoing financial implications. I'll need a seconder, please.
Bresciani.
Councillor
Great.
Janachek, yeah.
Thanks. You know, I think a lot of work has gone into this over the years. There's plenty of information in the Catalyst Committee report, essentially a positive recommendation to get this started. I wanted to make sure that the language was crystal clear and the directive from council was unambiguous, that we want to get this started as soon as possible. I chose some dates randomly. So if administration thinks this is a nutty idea in terms of timeline, just say so and we can talk about it. I think this is urgent, considering everything we've seen in the city's plans and in the Catalyst Committee. So I'm looking for feedback and support from council for this. And if administration wants to comment on the time frame and language, please do so. That's all I have.
Does administration have any comment? Someone? Hand up? Anyone? Thank you. Mr. Lacey.
So, thank you through you, Mayor Masters. I mean, we've done a fair amount of work around the development of a municipal land corporation from interjurisdictional research and analysis on this. So when I look at this motion as it is worded, I think that's achievable for us to come back in Q3 with a report for council's consideration.
Thank you. I guess my second intention there is that we get something up and running before the end of the year if possible, but we'll wait for that report. Thank you.
Speaking to the amendment, Councillor Nelson.
So, wasn't prepared for this, kind of, but what I'm trying to figure out with this is if we're directing administration to go do some more work, to go get another arm's length land corp developed, why? Why aren't we doing this internally? Do we have the capacity to be doing this land development corp within our city? And a reason I question this is we bear the weight of the decisions that these places make, and I mean, we all know what's going on right now, and we had no idea. Their board is the one that says what comes to us. We as councillors don't get to say. So my question is, why are we going to go do this again instead of our administration staff doing the work through the chair?
Ms. Anderson?
Ms. Anderson?
Are you okay, Ms. Anderson?
Yeah.
Ms. Anderson? Or Mr. Lacey? Ms. Anderson, Mr. Lacey?
Yeah, through the chair, I think I'll let Mr. Lacey start because a lot of this work, frankly, was done before I came on, and then I'll perhaps add on to it.
Yeah. So, through you, Mayor Masters, I mean, certainly there's many options with respect to land development, and when we did our interjurisdictional research, you know, some municipalities had that work in-house, which is kind of where it's at right now in the city. Many other municipalities as well have established a municipal land development corporation. And so in looking at that, there's advantages and disadvantages. I think the advantages of a municipal land development corporation that is located outside of administration proper is you're allowed to have, I think those corporations and those entities have much more focus. In some cases, I think there's sometimes more expertise. You see there with respect to land development. And when I speak to more focus, that's in part around the fact that quite frankly, administration has many priorities and can be pulled in many different directions. And so sometimes I think your focus does kind of shift depending on what the priorities or what the issues of the day might be. And so when I look at municipal land development corporations, those are, some of the two, I think, biggest benefits that they bring. But again, once again, it's a decision of council, and we see, and when we did our intergenerational research, you saw many different forms of this, including it being in-house. I think if it were to stay in-house, though, I think you need a conversation about a different focus, different skill sets being brought in, because I think what we're trying to accomplish here would require something different than what we have today.
Yeah, through the chair, I think the only thing that I would add to that is yeah, there's pros and cons to both. And as administration is currently set up in its iteration, I know in the Catalyst Committee report, there's an org structure with additional resources attached to it. And so to do that work internally, I mean, frankly, we can prioritize and bring expertise in a wide array of areas. We need to just have both the resources and the expertise to be able to do that work.
So can we not hire? We have a bunch of FTEs that need to be.
Through the chair, I would say we don't currently have a bunch of just FTEs just waiting to be launched for new positions. But I would say, I mean, part of what we do through the budget process, through reallocation of resources is prioritize what we do have and ask for more when we need it. And then also, of course, there's the external arm's length independent municipal corporations that also play their roles.
So, now correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to figure this out. We're spending money for real to-do stuff. Why can't that money be spent internally for us to do that stuff? And I'll tell you what bothers me with this is we as a city employees, we have nothing to gain or lose by how this land corp comes out or how this, we're doing it for the people of Regina and the taxpayers of Regina. And I know there's a lot of talk going on right now, and I'm just trying to figure out why that we as a city of Regina, our employees can't do this work internally to bring back something to us that we actually can vote on as council instead of just it being brought to us and we have to just deal with it through the chair.
I think it's been asked and answered. I think is that would be your, do you have a?
Well, through the chair, I think it's not my place to frankly say what should be internal and external. I'm your employee, and you really tell me and give me the scope. As Mr. Lacey said, there's many different models, frankly, of how city land is planned for, resourced, built, sold. And so there is no ultimate right or wrong. I would say when I look at what the Catalyst Committee report has as far as like its org structure, resources, that type of thing, we don't currently have that in-house in administration. Doesn't mean we could never have it. I'm saying today we do not have that.
Today we do not have it, but we can have it. Am I correct in saying that through the chair? But it's a possibility to have.
Through the chair, I would say administration, priorities, resources, what we do comes from the direction of my bosses.
So I'm going to totally vote against this. I don't want anything more outside of city administration and out of city council hands. I'm done with that discussion. So I believe that this needs to be handled internally at their direction and us as council and our city manager. I put our trust and faith in us and our administration. I don't put it in anything other than what we have within our city. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Bresciani, did you, I can't see you, but do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Can I ask Ms. Anderson, and the way I read this motion, that it would be up to you and your team to come back with different options of how you establish that, the MLDC. It wouldn't, I mean, you had one at Edmonton, we know Calgary's got one, Saskatoon's got one. Is that your understanding here?
Through Mayor Masters, I would say, first of all, in my time working in Edmonton, we didn't have one, so I can't actually speak to that. I'm just seeing the proposed motion for the first time. It looks like it's asking administration to put together information. I mean, it says for the corporation, governance structure, associated startup, and ongoing financial impact. So I would interpret that to be an independent structure from administration.
The way it reads, with options and recommendations with establishing the MLDC. So that would, to me, would that not to you understand it that there could be some creativity in how that is structured under your direction?
Through Mayor Masters, frankly, if it was under my direction, it would be in administration.
So you're saying that you do not support the Municipal Land Development Corporation?
Through Mayor Masters, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in my interpretation of what is being asked, it's for administration to develop a report
Yes.
that outlines different ways that a municipal land development corporation could come to fruition.
That's right. That's what this motion is asking.
It's not asking how we would do it, how administration would do it, or what additional resources or expertise administration would need to do it internally.
Sorry, I'm not clear what you're saying. Just like the way I understand this, and I need clarity because I understand it that it says the administration be directed to report back to City Council by Q3 of 2023 with options and recommendations respecting the establishment of an MLDC, and that it include the following information. So where do you see that it does not align with what you're saying?
So all I'm saying is that as soon as a municipal land development corporation is an entity independent of administration.
Again, is that the only way that you see it? That, okay, that's what you're saying, that that's the only one way. It wouldn't be, it could not be a creative way where it's a combination. Okay. You're seeing it that it's only under, it's an arm's length corporation, standalone. Okay. And sorry, just to get your thoughts, are you suggesting there's a concern with that?
Through Mayor Masters, I don't think I again said that really it's up to the direction of the mayor and council, and from what I understand, there has been work done prior to me being city manager on the pros and the cons of having it within administration and outside of administration.
Okay. I think one of the things that I ask is about the expertise. And I think that's the importance that is one of the pieces, when we look at it, takes it out of the city's hands, you're right, but also it gives us the experts to be able to do the work. So I think I heard you say we don't have the experts within the city. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, we don't have those experts today. I mean, we have some resources, but the way that it is structured in the Catalyst Committee report, I mean, you can see what it is and the cost of it. That's not currently how we are set up in administration, or frankly, there probably wouldn't be an ask for this.
Okay. So just last question. Are you suggesting that this could be done in-house instead of going through the MLDC? Is that what you're suggesting, or?
Through the chair, with additional resources, yes.
And as the city manager, is that your preference? Is that what you see best for the city, I guess, is what I'm asking?
Through the chair, I would almost recommend, you know, I don't want to be disrespectful, frankly, of all of the work and the conversations that happened before I was here. And so, you know, if this is something that that you want to look at, there could be an amendment to the report where you include, I don't know, a comparison of the Municipal Land Development Corporation versus doing it internal. I feel like I don't have all of the background, all of the information, and all of the research that I need to actually be able to answer a question on a proposed motion that just came on the floor less than an hour ago.
Okay. Councillor, I guess, I guess the only thing is that Councillor Stevens, would you be amicable to what Ms. Anderson has indicated as to looking at versus in-house versus the MLDC, kind of in this as well, to bring that back?
To be honest, I just kind of presumed that would be bolted into the options and recommendations, and I didn't have to articulate it. It's been a discussion we've had on and on for several years now. This is just to bring some conclusion. So if you need it spelled out there, that's cool, but it was just assumed that that would be a potential option and recommendation that we could consider. And maybe for the record, I brought this forward several weeks ago for discussion at executive, just for context.
Great. I would support that if that is the understanding that you're saying, that could be bolted in there if we have to put it in writing, or if administration understands it that way. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, Ms. Ackerman is changing it to include or department within the city. I need, you're okay with that friendly amendment? Councillor Bresciani, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Is that all, Councillor Bresciani?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Councillor Stevens, and then just one very brief comment. 4A of the recommendation, the motion, reads, the City of Regina should consider the establishment of a specialized agency to advance major catalyst projects to support and maximize the economic benefits for Regina, and that is taken from recommendation 17 of the Catalyst Committee. Councillor Stevens, is it your understanding that the motion you've brought is in furtherance of this recommendation?
Correct, but its mandate would extend beyond, but it launches from the recommendations, correct?
Hearing that, listening to the response of the administration, I move the motion. I'll accept this as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so now this, council, just to be clear, I need Councilor Mancinelli, you seconded the report? You seconded it? Are you okay with that? Okay, so you can take this down. It now forms part of the recommendations of the main. Councilor Stevens, anything further?
Yes, I guess it's a procedural question considering what I've heard from some colleagues. Would it be feasible to discuss and vote on recommendation for the multi-use event complex separately from the other priorities?
We can absolutely do that.
Okay, so comments, trail system, low-hanging fruit. I think we can get this off the ground. It was remarkable at the Catalyst Committee how uniform all of the discussion was about this. So this is something I think that goes back a decade or more. We have the staff, the expertise. I think people are lined up to work on this recommendation. Let's get it going as soon as possible. I'd also say that the library, in my mind, is a pretty straightforward decision. I really respect the concerns of residents about heritage. I hope that's bolted into the advancement of the library renewal project in some capacity. I think the evidence from other municipalities is pretty clear about the impact and value of libraries. And despite this antagonism between the Friends of the Library and the RPL, oddly enough, there's actually a consensus about how important libraries are. It's just a matter of who thinks they're more important than the other. So I think in terms of the Catalyst Committee recommendations and the framework that was used, I would say this is a pretty simple one for me to agree with, and it has my support. I think where I get stuck with we'll call it the arena, but it is much more, I guess I'm genuinely concerned about the possible negative effects of it in the downtown. And I think that was discussed, and I think to Tim Reed's credit and to the Catalyst Committee, we discussed that. What I'm also hearing is that there's different things that people are bringing forward, that solid ideas that could achieve the same end. And I'm all behind investing public dollars in what we consider to be revitalization, and by that I mean something that spurs population growth, foot traffic, residential development, and commercial activity, and otherwise pretty deteriorating circumstances. But that also means looking at the state of sidewalks and large facilities. And I think my concern is that I'm losing confidence that the arena itself is the project to do that in the downtown. I might actually prefer a multitude of different projects and focus some on the yards as it aligns with the yards neighborhood plan, and potentially some for the downtown. And I think that's my apprehension right now about launching this as our leading priority. There's a considerable amount of work that we could yield from the recreation master plan, the underutilized land studies, in terms of what residents are looking for in the downtown and beyond that would actually spark a rejuvenation of these neighborhoods in the core or greater downtown area. So I think that's where my concern lies. And I do worry that that advancement or that issue will suck a lot of the energy out of the room, and that we'll focus on the arena and not the fundamentals that build a solid community. In fact, Halifax is a great demonstration of that versus an almost empty ice district outside of the activation times. Halifax's success wasn't built for major projects. It was actually they nailed the fundamentals of city building and made it easier to develop and to build, as did Saskatoon. And I think what's noteworthy in the north is that the complex is actually a cherry on top of the ice cream, and it's a result of 30 years of investing in policies and infrastructure in their downtown, and I think we should take note. And I'm also thinking of some of the points that were raised by the delegates who were for and against, and I think I agree with all of them in the sense that we need to invest in services and amenities that make it a livable community, and that City Council has to show leadership. So that's why we like to be carved out and voted on separately. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens. Councillor Bresciani, you're up next.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to ask a few questions before I make a decision whether to table. But first off, I'd like to I think the work that the Catalyst Committee and the whole community came out to provide all of the surveys and the work research that's been done. So I think that's the staff as well that have done incredible work. We heard that we've done extensive communication and consultation. I have a question though, as to have we engaged the tenants of the arena that is sitting there now? And I don't know, and if so, how has that been done through all of this engagement? And I would like a response to that.
Councillor Hawkins, I think as co-chair, you may have the answer to this as it relates to, Councillor Bresciani, you're speaking to the Pats Hockey Club?
Yes, yeah,
All
the major tenant, yeah.
Councillor Hawkins.
Through you, Mayor, with respect, I think Mr. Reid probably has more detailed information.
Mr. Reid, would you come down and address council?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. The Pats Hockey Club were participants in the Arena Study Phase 1 through their executive leadership. In the second phase of the Arena Study, the Pats Hockey Club declined participation, and they did not have a role actively in the participation of the Catalyst Committee. However, as the draft results were being shared, I can confirm that the Pats executive team reached out. We had a conversation on their priorities, and there were essentially three concerns or three priorities that the Regina Pats Hockey Club had expressed to us. One is the venue size. There was questions around should it be larger than it is. Two is the impact of inflation and the original cost numbers that were shared, and I assured them that we were doing a review of the impact of inflation. And three, that there was a desire for the facility to be downtown. And so we requested that they provide some information through their consulting team that has been working on their thoughts of a new mid-sized multipurpose event center, and they had shared that with us. And so that was the engagement that we had with the Regina Pats. We were able to confirm with them the messaging that would be issued within the public, within the Catalyst document as it was released. And we were clear that we didn't have a mechanism to suggest changing the scope of the facility beyond what was recommended. We couldn't justify that based on the work that had been done in the past. Hopefully that
And
answers.
just elaborate, thank you, yeah, it does, thank you for that. So the scope of the facility, just please elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, through the chair. The question was really, should the facility be 12,000 or 14,000 seats? Based on the work of the Arena Committee Phase 1, the Arena Committee Phase 2, and the reporting that we got, we couldn't see a justification for a marketplace of our size to be in that level of facility space. And so there was a desire for a bigger facility. As a Catalyst Committee, we explored the data that had been submitted, and we felt the recommendations that were in front of you were reasonable.
So the recommendation, just to be clear, is the 10,000 seats? Is that accurate?
10,000, yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect, okay. And then just next steps, how does this progress, Mr. Reid, moving forward then? And I'm not sure if that's for maybe city administration or yourself, like what were the next steps on this meeting that they're fine with it going downtown somewhere or somewhere in the downtown core? Where the thoughts on next steps, and I'm really going to be talking about like investment and things like that.
Through the chair, I won't speak on behalf of the Regina Pats, and I don't think I should. What I would say is I think they are actively engaged in a concept of a new facility. They recognize that it's important, and they recognize that the sustainability and the success of their primary product offering is somewhat contingent upon finding a path forward that isn't just the brand center of today. And so
Sure.
I think certainly my sentiment was there was a willingness to engage in that conversation. However, I think it's predicated upon a decision that we want to explore the construction of a new event center. And so I don't have in a position whether they would be unprepared to have a conversation about the refurbishment of the brand or a new event center. I think they'd like to engage in either of those, but I think it's probably premature to say this is what they want to do.
Okay. Thank you for that. So to the, I guess, administration, if this passes, what are the next steps? Because I think we've all heard from the Regina taxpayers that they don't want this all to fall on the taxpayers. There's got to be some, obviously, private investment. What are the next steps to looking at going out to finding out who was interested in investing, and obviously being the PATS being a major, the major tenant and investor there? How is that going to work?
Councillor Bresciani, your question is of like Ms. Anderson or Mr. Lacey?
That's right.
Thank you.
Or I guess who is responsible after this goes, and if it passes, what's the next step? That's what I'm asking. And who is responsible for making those connections to the community? And one would be, of course, to the major shareholder. Who does that? Like, how does this all work? Until the Catalyst Committee is, and I'm not sure about, sorry, not the Catalyst Committee, sorry.
Mr. Lacey, Ms. Anderson, questions for administration?
Through Mayor Masters, I think I've been really referring to the Catalyst report as a concept plan. And so I would say we're consistently, whether it's in collaboration with Mayor Masters, councillors, other orders of government, having conversations about use and investments throughout the city. And so really what this serves, again, is a concept plan. And again, I've referred a couple times to the decision-making matrix that's embedded within the document, is that it does speak to kind of the different triggers and considerations that administration would consider before bringing anything forward to council for a further conversation. So it's not like if the Catalyst Committee report goes through that we're spending money and putting shovels in the ground tomorrow. It's a concept plan. It's about readiness so that when opportunities arise, we're ready for them, and frankly, it gives us a bit of a path and focus for where we should be looking to make those investments.
Thank you. Just to push this a little further, as the I guess the major tenant in that building, and it does affect them if whatever the decision is. How then is it assured that that engagement is continuing from administration to take this forward? Like, how does that work, and how is council briefed on that?
Through Mayor Masters, I believe council has already made a motion saying that anything that we move forward with, I think that the wording includes appropriate public engagement. And I think that, so what I would say now is we're committed to appropriate public engagement, and that looks different depending on what the project is.
Okay. I'll just make a point that, it's one thing, and I just use this example as a business owner. If my building was going to be affected, and I've invested in there, and I'm the major shareholder in that building, and consultation is moving forward without being, I guess, engaged or some priority there, I would hope that that is our goal when we're talking about the arena, because of course we want the PATS to remain here, and they are a major stakeholder. So I just want to make that clear.
Yes, through Mayor Masters, I would agree that appropriate stakeholder engagement would include gathering the perspectives of the people and organizations that are within existing structures that might be impacted by future decisions.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for that. Then Mayor Masters, I will not be tabling that because that was the concern that I want to ensure that I understand now the PATS had some engagement, and there will be future engagement moving forward. So I will not be tabling that. But I do have just one of the things that I think is really, really important. I've toured the facility in the Acrisure down in Palm Springs. And I will tell you that they have done this facility in a way that is absolutely beautiful, but is a multi-use facility. And when people ask me, do we need an arena or a multi-use facility? The Brand Center, we know, is absolutely falling apart. It's flooding. Things I mean, I've been there on many events, and we know it needs a lot of work. And I think that's part of the education back to the general public. The second piece is that I want to ensure that this becomes, and I guess that'll be through the engagement, that it is a multi-use facility. And I think that's another piece that they built that arena or multi-use facility here for those purposes, for the community. And so I think going forward, I think that's something as we move forward with this that has to be consulted. The other thing that I'm worried about, and I've heard the term and I've talked to others about kind of using that greater downtown. And my worry is that if we choose to say it only can go downtown, we are a small city. I see the yards and downtown collectively together as our downtown. And so I guess the only I guess amendment I would like to change, and Amber does have it up, is that in point number 4, I would like to just change the wording. And if Amber, if you can put it up. I don't have it in front of me, but let's see here. The term downtown core could be just to greater downtown area. And the reason I say that, I think it opens it up to ensure that if we do have investment coming forth, that is another opportunity to not hone us in just into one area.
Councillor Bresciani, do you have the greater downtown area, do you have a specific definition of what that is?
Well, that would include the yards.
So do you mean from the yards from Albert Street to Winnipeg Street? The warehouse district, yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry, do you just want to include the yards area? Or do you mean the warehouse district?
The warehouse district, yeah.
So, I think Judith Farasuk had highlighted, or perhaps Ms. Gibbons had highlighted, that the warehouse district actually goes from Albert Street to Winnipeg Street, and that what would be considered would be between Albert Street and Broad Street, not.
Okay.
Sure. So,
yeah.
to restrict
whatever the meaning was for that, whatever the meaning that they brought forward, I think that's very important. Okay.
Okay. Councillor Hawkins, you have the opportunity to accept this as a friendly amendment if you felt.
I would accept it with a friendly amendment with one, if the mover of the amendment was agreeable to include in the greater downtown area the real lands as well. The argument being that if we're going to open this up to look at options for the location of the multi-purpose complex, that we should look at all the options, so it would also include within the greater downtown area the real lands.
We've kind of been discussing this through it being a centrally located amenity. Personally, I got no problems with it opening up to real, but there's been a lot of work to get this defined within some borders, so we have the same language being used, the same locations. And I think this widening that we're doing right now is just going to feed into a lot of misunderstanding and a lot more contention. Just that whole greater downtown area, in the conversations I heard people talking that language, I actually heard it defined from Duding to College, Albert to Broad. And right now in these last 10 sentences, that got blown away too. So I just, one way or another, I'm not trying to say which way it should go, but it's just, I think we're going backwards on what we're achieving.
Okay, hang on a second. I think Councillor Hawkins, you're saying if, Councillor Bresciani, are you amenable to widening it, or are you specific just to that narrow, that between Albert Street and Broad Street?
My intent, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah,
my intent, yeah, thank you. My intent is for to consider the yards. So
Okay.
do I have to just
Okay,
put in the
so,
yards?
so
That's-
Councillor Hawkins, there's a friendly amendment to say the tract kind of lining up with the specific proper downtown according to where the bid is. Are you amenable to that friendly amendment and just leave it in there? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if we can't fit anything on a site, we're going to have to go somewhere else anyways.
Sorry, Mayor Masters.
Go ahead.
I wasn't finished. So
Sorry.
if we want to, I'm fine to also leave it with adding real in as Councillor Hawkins has suggested. I think that my point is this. If there is an investor out there that is coming forth and we say it's only in the downtown area, they walk away. At the end of the day, I want to just make sure that it's open. So if we've got an investor that comes in and says, hey, I want to invest it and I want to put it in real and I'll pay for the whole thing. Well, we haven't pinned anybody in. So I'm fine to include it in real as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And Mayor Masters, my personal preference, if it matters, is I'd like to see it in the downtown core area. But I think in the spirit of this amendment, if we're going to open it up, we should not restrict the way we open it up. And so with that, I'll second the amendment as it reads on the board, and I'll accept it as a friendly amendment.
I don't think your seconder will.
It's up to him to decide.
Oh, apologies, Councillor Mancinelli.
I'm just trying to process the logistics of this. The whole exercise was to try to figure out a timeline and placement for construction, investment, trying to get things like tax lift incorporated. When I look at where Mosaic Stadium ended up, from the outside looking in before I was on council, I don't know all the insides of it, but it looked like it was a penny wise and dollar stupid decision to me. And to try to open this up when we've analyzed the different outcomes from the different placements, I start to get nervous that we're back to just make anything fit anywhere for anyone who comes along, and I don't think that was the purpose of the exercise.
Councillor, again, I'm going to circle back around here, but Councillor Hawkins did say with preference given to the downtown, the proper downtown, like if you've included greater downtown with preference.
My viewpoint's been noted already, and I think the bigger part of this group that I belong to sometimes is being agreeable to try to get decisions made. So in the spirit of agreeable decisions and trying to work with my co-workers, I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. Councillor Bresciani, that's now forms part, based upon their acceptance, it forms part of the recommendation for number 4 now. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything further?
No, that's everything.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Zakidniak, you're up next.
Thank you. I also have an amendment, and so I want to start with that because I want to see if it will be considered as well as a friendly amendment. Amber and Jim both have it. I can read it out. So it's, actually I don't have it handy, but it's essentially that to change, that recommendation 2B, Roman numeral 3, be amended to read meet or exceed. It currently says consider. Meet or exceed the City of Regina's Sustainability 2050 targets when determining the related design, construction, and facility operations. Although it's theoretically a small wording change, I think it holds us accountable to the commitments that we unanimously approved for the framework and future councils as well. I think it's a crucial small wording change to ensure that we remain accountable. So I guess the first question is, could that be considered as a friendly amendment?
Just one moment, please. Councillor Zakidniak, for the record, can you explain what your amendment, as opposed to incorporating the City of Regina's Sustainability 2050 targets when determining relating design, construction, and facility operations, you say meet or exceed. What does that mean?
Okay, so I'm looking on page 2 of the administration report. These are the recommendations that that are up for us to approve. And so when I look at page 2 of the administration report, and so like I said, this is point 2B, Roman numeral 3. It doesn't say, I can't remember what word you just used, but it says consider. It doesn't say implement or whatever else. It says consider. Consider is something that you can choose to do or not choose to do. And so I'm strengthening the language so that nobody has the ability to walk back from a commitment we've already made by just saying, yes, we considered it and decided not to do it.
Thank you, I understand that. I think the meet or exceed as opposed to incorporate, but you're saying meet or exceed, and so if I ask you the question, what does it mean to meet or exceed the targets in
Mayor
relation?
Masters,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't see incorporate. You're
No, that's what I'm saying. You're saying meet or exceed, so what does that, like if we're voting on this,
okay,
what does that mean?
Okay, so I'm saying meet or exceed our sustainability targets, so which is to be net zero by 2050. So when we're talking about the related design, construction, and facility operations, what we need to be doing is ensuring that we are meeting or exceeding our targets by designing things to be net zero.
And if we can't achieve net zero in the design, are you good with another form of offset?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Zakiniak requires a seconder. Councillor Stadnichuk, did you wish to speak?
Sorry, Mayor Master, so is this not considered a friendly amendment then?
Oh, sorry.
I wonder if I could ask my co-chair whether this is a doable thing. And I ask him because he has expertise in this area, actually. Is this too restrictive would be my question.
Through the chair, I actually think it is a great suggestion. I think it holds the development into account to something that may have had language that was more loose. So I think it is a strong suggestion and consistent with, I think, the spirit of the Catalyst Committee, which was to align with the 2050 targets. It does come at a cost, traditionally. And so I think it is important just to recognize that net zero is being done in major multipurpose event centers, but it comes with a cost. And so if you were to speak to the folks in Seattle that recently built the only net zero arena on the planet, there is a cost left to it. However, that's part of the brand identity and the message that they send. So I think it is a good suggestion. I think it adds clarity to direction that I think was given by the Catalyst Committee. I think it's achievable. It does come with a cost.
Mayor, I'm happy to accept this as a friendly amendment.
Councillor Mancinelli?
Happy to accept as well, pertinent, and I think it fits where we have to go.
Okay, Councillor Zakiniak, are you good with that?
I am good with that. And so can I then just move on with my other comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So in the document, throughout the document, there is reference to, so calling the arena a multi-purpose event center, and then the soccer/baseball stadium a multi-purpose outdoor event center. So I would suggest that that's unnecessarily confusing. Does administration have any plans to use different names for either one of those entities moving forward?
Ms. Anderson?
Through you, Mayor Masters, that hasn't frankly been top of mind yet. So I would say we're always open to the naming, but we haven't had robust conversations about it.
I think it's a type. I think it's a type of project, not the actual name of a project.
Yeah, so I'll just give the feedback that I suggest that those two are very close and unnecessarily confusing for future conversation of both entities. Now, I do have another question. So one of the recommendations is, this is from the Catalyst Committee report itself, is that the CSIR is engaged to develop measurement criteria. Considering our issues with finding appointment to that committee and just some of the delays with that committee getting started, do we have any sense of when CSIR would be able to develop measurement criteria?
Ms. Young, would you like to come speak to that?
Good morning. CSIR has yet to identify an executive director who will lead the organization and the mandate from the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. I feel that that is some of the advice that we've taken from within administration through other leadership within our organization around how there's an evaluation through those priorities from the plan to evaluate and develop any projects or work that we do or work that comes out of direction from council for the city.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part. Can you repeat that, Ms. Young?
So the work that's happened here at the city prior to my coming has had an evaluation process or a working process with community around evaluating projects, parks, playgrounds. I'm speaking for Ms. Shaley, and I apologize, I'm probably not doing a very good job. What we would continue to do, or what we would hope that the CSI board would continue to do, is creating that formal process. There's a toolkit that comes along with the CSWB plan, and using that as an evaluation tool as we do our work throughout the city, throughout the CSIR board, and the mandate that's given to the executive director once that person's established.
Okay, so are you saying because of the existing tools that measurement criteria already exists?
I think in an informal case-by-case basis, I think we can develop or further strengthen the toolkit and create an evaluation piece for CSIR, and they can develop it to stand behind that.
Okay, so it sounds like once an executive director is hired, that theoretically could come fairly quickly.
I can't speak to how quickly the work can come, but I believe that that'll be part of the work of the executive director.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, there's been some discussion about this already, but I would like to hear just a quick overview of what all is meant about developing to a position of shovel ready and how that differs from our current processes.
Ms. Anderson, I don't think you can answer this. So Mr. Lacey or Ms. Nelson, tell us in 2019 when an aquatic center was identified as being first on the list, why don't we use that as the example, how much work was performed prior to a vote of, in 2019 and 2020 and 2021? Why don't you let us know what work was done after that was identified?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll refer that question to Ms. Bisdell to speak to the work that was done with respect to getting to the feasibility study that council
So Ms.
saw
Dell,
and
yeah.
made a decision. I think that's what
Ms.
you're asking.
Bisdell?
Through the chair. So I would say the work of doing the feasibility study took approximately a year to get, just over a year to bring back a report to council, which was in July of 2022. And I would say that shovel ready, I'm not sure if there's anybody online that could speak to the funding. Shovel ready is really, I would say, a requirement for applying for grant funding, and that I don't know what that definition is from a federal or provincial grant funding opportunity. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Okay.
Councillor Zakidia?
Okay. Okay. My next question is regarding the decision-making criteria. On page 12 of the Catalyst Committee report, it says the final element within the decision-making flowchart that was agreed upon was the need to evaluate all major civic infrastructure projects within the 4 priority pillars. What qualifies as a major infrastructure project in that recommendation?
Mr. Reid, do you want to answer that one?
I will, for sure. From an order standpoint, through the chair to the councillor, I could add some additional commentary on shovel-ready if that would be helpful as well.
Certainly.
I just don't know that it would be.
Yeah.
So from a Catalyst standpoint, I think our understanding of shovel-ready was essentially that you had a schematic design that talked about the overarching program of the facility. That schematic design had an operational plan that would be plus or minus essentially 25%. How many people would use it? What would it cost? How would it program? What are the hours of operations? Within that operational plan, you need to understand what representative groups would have access to the facility, ensuring that it's inclusive and accessible. So the utilization model becomes quite important. And the overview of the users that you have engaged through outreach is important as well. So really you need a schematic. You need a schematic to say how much it's going to cost. In addition to that, you need an overview of the operating model. Both of those would be essentially plus or minus 25%. That would be in a position, from a grant funding standpoint, to be shovel-ready. Hopefully that's helpful. Can I ask, just for clarity on your prior question, just so that I make sure that I hit all your points, please?
In terms of shovel-ready, that's sufficient. Thank you. And you're wanting clarity about the next question?
Yes, please.
Okay. I have to find it. I wrote it down. Okay, so the decision-making criteria speaks to about using the pillars to for any major civic infrastructure project. So my question is, what qualifies under that recommendation as a major civic infrastructure project?
Through the chair, that's a great question. I don't actually think we benchmark that. By the recommendations that we've shared, essentially the smallest of those facilities would sit at about 22 million. So I would assume that anything over 20 million would be our benchmark within the Catalyst Committee framework. That might not be a big number on certain projects, but I think the intent was anything that was considered a Catalyst project should be reviewed by those benchmarks. So I don't know that we set a dollar threshold. I think it was more relative to facilities that catalyze a neighborhood, a district, an activation.
Okay. Also, if in terms of the proposed priority of projects, I believe there was mention within the decision-making criteria, perhaps that there is although this is the suggested priority and framework, that if an investor came forward came forward in relation to a project, there is the possibility that a project would be considered out of order, out of sequence. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, it is. I think it's a really important comment because it was foundational to where the Catalyst Committee was. All things being equal, the sense was you should sequence the projects in this order. However, if a private investor or a government investor or money fell out of the sky to 30%, you should really think about it because it relieves a burden from a capital finance standpoint from the city. If it hits 50%, you should actively talk about it because honestly, it's a huge investment relief for the city. So although we have a sequencing, if money was to become available to a tune of 30 to 50% project costs, our recommendation to you is you wouldn't want to lose that money. So resequence your projects based on funding availability, whether that's private or public forms.
Okay, thank you. How much time do I have left?
We have a couple minutes left, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. So I just have some comments now. First of all, I want to say that I do appreciate the work of the Catalyst Committee and those who have contributed to get us to where we are today. However, I do also at the same time feel that this process I felt has been rushed from the beginning. I voted against the terms of reference because I felt that we were trying to advance something too quickly without having a clear enough understanding of what we were trying to accomplish. I think we heard that from residents we did hear that from residents who came forward and expressed the same, whether it was criticisms or sense that their opinion they did not have adequate information or opportunity to give their opinion. I have noticed that even within my questions today, that there's a lack of understanding about what some of the things mean in this report, or a lack of consensus. And I think this is where we're talking about city building initiatives for decades to come, and it's important that we do this properly. And I noted at the beginning of the meeting that this time today didn't actually work well for many of us. I'm probably going to have to leave right away. And so I think it's also unfortunate that the time wasn't taken to find a time that all of us could be available for this really important discussion. When we see what happens when we rush things and don't follow proper procedure, the rebranding of Tourism Regina, I'm not willing to support this at this time. I have a lot of hesitation with this rushed process that seems to be becoming the norm at City Hall. As a result, I unfortunately will not be able to support any part of this report, and had I been given more time as requested, perhaps I'd be able to. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Councillor Pindura.
Still morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good night. Just a couple questions. Well, some comments and questions. I'll have 5 minutes, so I'll try to make it quick. One of the delegates last night talked about 1970, 1980 opportunity lost, railway relocation. He talked of entities like Connexus, some other university being a destination, being outside of the city. He talked about things like nursing and dental school being moved out of the core downtown. Theaters moved outside the downtown. So I'm not sure what we were thinking or trying to achieve with that kind of suburbia, that kind of a thinking. So I think we reversed. We're back at the steps where we abandoned, you might say, the downtown. So this is the good news that we are looking at coming back, and we talked about revitalization and rejuvenation of downtown core, North Central, Heritage, all the areas. And as the folks are talking about that, this is not the win all, solve all issues that we have. But I think by not doing anything, I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to solve things either. And the comments were made that we have research, we have a lot of studies, and to me, people are still leaving. I've asked those questions before. We're among our 5 Western Canadian cities, we are the smallest population. I've always asked, why is that? So could this be an answer to that, somewhat of it? On a high level, I would say yes. You talk of other cities that are really going fast to attract people, attract business, and we heard from the business community as well. If you don't help me to retain or bring business into the area, they can't do it by themselves. And the question was asked, would the city and the taxpaying public is part of that solution to help the business and help the taxes? So I think the talking, I believe it's we should be done with talking. We should be done with doing something. I know it's a large number. It scares me, honestly, because am I going to saddle up my, I mean, we talked about saddling up our kids with things, or our great grandkids with things, or like Councillor Hawkins said, I mean, we need to do something so our kids will stick around here when we age. And this is where the problem is. You have communities that are leaving. You look at Calgary, you ask Calgary, why they're growing? Because our people from here going there, because guess what? When the kids move, grandparents go, and that's where they retire. Do more, I believe. I mean, not one thing is going to solve it. As Councillor Stevens talked about other things, but this is a question about catalysts, what the catalysts come up with, and how the community has a buy into this. So, my question to Mr. Reid, I didn't have a chance to ask. We had a large conversation through you, Mayor. I'm a soccer fanatic, right? I mean, it's the largest, fastest growing sport. A lot of kids are involved, and we want to keep our young. We want to keep our kids busy, occupied with things that they grow, they build their skills and all, as being the future leaders. I'm a little bit, like Lisa Gibbons would say, we really didn't talk much about the warehouse district type of things, and she's still very positive to be a good team player. I want to do the same. But I'd like to ask Mr. Reid, I know it's there, kind of on the bottom, didn't kind of make the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing, whatever. And baseball's included as well. Can you give me a little bit more? I mean, it is a low-hanging fruit. Only 20-something, only, I'm not saying only. What was the catalyst debate about why that didn't make it to be played somewhere? Mayor?
Co-chairs, Councillor Hawkins or Mr. Reid, you want to answer is it the soccer question is what we're saying?
Definitely, through the chair. I actually believe there was a sense at the Catalyst Committee that soccer itself on a synthetic field surface was very important. I think that is echoed within the recreational master plan, and it is a priority that is in planning documents already. I also believe that the Catalyst Committee recognized that a synthetic baseball surface is something that we don't have in our city, and something that would extend the ability for play both in the spring and the fall. The bulk of the discussion was around, do you need the amenities around them? And so there's a very recreational approach to soccer, or perhaps baseball. I think there was general consensus that a synthetic surface for both of those sports were important. The bigger question was, do you need the supporting amenities around it? The locker room space, the concession space, the stands. That was probably the larger question around the committee. I actually think the committee appreciated the opportunity of bringing them together. In fact, I think they recognized the only way that those amenities could act as a catalyst investment was if you brought those volumes of people together. And in the summertime, they would literally drive hundreds of thousands of people potentially. They just don't do it all year round. And so I wouldn't minimize in any way the importance of soccer. We felt it was well handled within your administrative documents. And I think most importantly, we recognize that in 2026, Canada and Regina will have an opportunity to be part of something that hasn't been in North America in a long time, but truthfully is a global opportunity. And so although Toronto and Vancouver will be the host sites for FIFA 2026, there will be opportunity across Canada to participate, and we should make sure that we understand that. Coming out of FIFA 2026, as we've seen in the past, there's likely a significant escalation or material growth in the participation in soccer in Canada, and so we should plan for that because it's coming. So there was lots of support. Actually, your recreational team has it handled very well. It seems like there was a clear path forward. Would be my comments.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, through you, I think maybe your co-chair about the survey. I'm kind of curious to hear the opinion. I'm kind of throwing it either at the co-chair or you, but I think co-chair. The opinion of the survey. What does the co-chair feel about how the survey speaks to us about what we hear from, what we're hearing, and does that line up with what the Catalyst, how the Catalyst Committee was going?
Thank you, through the chair. I actually want to acknowledge the participation that was achieved. With the utmost respect, when it was proposed a few weeks ago, I'm always sensitive to how you get people to engage or how you provide constructive outreach on a short period of time. And to have 8,100 people participate online and 1,000 people on a phone survey, I thought was extensive. If you add that to the 17,750 people that have been engaged through the various elements of this, there's been really good work done. From an outreach perspective, that's what you want. I was interested on the comments by Mr. Bozanov, I believe, about the value of the scientific survey. It's something I haven't bumped into in my tenure being part of these surveys in the last 5 years. It's not a conversation that we have. It's not a precedent that we have. If it's the gold standard, and if, as he said, this is what I would recommend you follow, I actually think this is something that was missing in our prior work, whether that's through Evraz Place 2.0 or Futures Committee or the gazillion surveys that we've done. That was really helpful commentary and something that I haven't seen us do in the past, and I haven't been part of. You know, my comment is, I think outreach is about conversations, in-person meetings, being heard, having conversations, surveys and polls. We're never going to end up with this perfect survey. You just won't. But I actually want to recognize the work that's been done. I think the conversations that you're having with delegates yesterday, outreach is about all of those things. You know, it's not just tick boxes in a survey, although they're helpful. I think from a council standpoint, an administrative standpoint, and a Catalyst Committee, we've done good work. There's lots of good information. What I would suggest is you don't necessarily need to make any decisions today as a council. You have flexibility in a planning document that you can move 50 times if you'd like in the future. But I think you have really good information. And I want to respect that there is a lot of it, and being able to isolate, you know, the key elements of that is difficult. I thought the survey was good work. And I thought it added more information to some important decisions. I thought it was incredibly helpful. I don't know if that's what you're asking for, but that was my sense of it.
Yeah, Councillor Fundura, your microphone is off because you have 2 seconds left.
That was quick.
Yep. Yeah,
What the
it
heck
was
is going
5
on?
minutes, actually.
My Polish clock says otherwise.
See that?
Sorry, just
There we go. And you're done. I'm going to turn it back off.
No, I just have a quick comment. Is we cannot afford not to. So I heard that tomorrow it's going to be more difficult than what it was talked about yesterday. So yesterday is not going to get us to tomorrow, and today we need to make the decision, and we can move with it as long as we get something on the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Councillor Stanachuk.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair. So one of the delegations last night, did talk about that in this overall Catalyst report and plan, that what was missing was the perspectives of architects and other urban planning professionals. And I don't know a lot about that whole area, but it was an interesting point. And so I want to ask if there's a role for, you know, also taking that perspective in terms of what we want our city to be, we want our downtown to be, and if that is a possibility. I don't know if that's a question for administration as we move forward on this.
Ms. Anderson?
Through Mayor Masters, I think absolutely. I mean, planning the city through a lens that is we do have urban planners, you know, in our ranks, and I think as administration we both need to balance planning the future city with opportunities, frankly, as they come up. And so I think, for me, that's what the Catalyst Committee report does, is more about the planning part. But yeah, as far as any of these future projects go, incorporating urban planners, architects, the experts who have the vision, it's a combination, frankly, of what we have internally and what we need to consult, along, obviously, with the public engagement to better understand what the community wants. So I would say, yeah.
Okay. My second question through the chair is also regarding some of the delegations that that have a fairly strong presence in our downtown. So that was the Regina Folk Festival, the Farmers Market, a number of the representatives from the owners of the Cure, who were talking about the young entrepreneurs that are really active in the downtown. So what struck me was that the Regina Folk Festival, it's one weekend in August, it's a benefit of $3 million is what the economic benefit in the downtown, according to them, is. So I want to make sure that, and it is one of the points in the other measures about further appropriate public engagement opportunities. Will we be making sure we don't miss those kinds of organizations that really have a major impact on our downtown and bringing people from across the city, across the province, and even other provinces that come to their festivals into the market?
Yes, through Mayor Masters, I would almost say that's independent of the Catalyst report. Understanding what's happening in our downtown core, whether it's the construction that we're doing as a city, whether it's the external partners doing it, and kind of bringing everyone together to plan and have conversations about it, is critical, because we know we need to do construction. So we can't say we're not going to do it because it's inconvenient. So it's more about how do we do it in collaboration, and it goes to the point, again, I think it was Councillor Bresciani wanting reassurance of, as you're making changes, ensuring public engagement involves hearing the voices of the tenants of those structures. So I would say that whatever we do downtown, so whether it's planned road construction, whether it's new builds, whatever that is, we need to do better with engaging as far in advance as possible with some of our externals. I met with Folk Fest actually today on some of the road construction that we're doing, and have made a commitment to make sure that we're engaging with them, I would say more expediently, and ensuring that we're hearing what they're saying. I know one of their concerns, frankly, is for us, 2024 Folk Festival seems over a year away. They're already planning for that. And so we need to, frankly, be in tune with the business cycle of the tenants that are downtown, and working with them to provide them as much information as we can.
Yeah. And I think through the chair, I would say that another learning, I think, what I got from that message yesterday was that it's not just the big shiny things that are going to revitalize our downtown, that there are a lot of organizations and small businesses that are creating a community. Another question, I guess this would probably be for Mr. Lacey, is just, I think we need, and the public needs to understand, by approving this report, if we approve this report, what it means in terms of our financial commitment that we are making for this, because there are a lot of people who believe that if we pass this report, we're on the hook for $500 million, like $500 million. So can you explain exactly what we are committing to by providing this report, and are we going to be spending that money, or are we just saying we approve it in principle?
I think we're in for 180 already, but are you answering that, Mr. Lacey?
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Mayor Masters. So, as the city manager has explained, this is really a concept plan or a roadmap. that will guide us as we move forward. And so individual project decisions, just like the recent discussion council had about the indoor aquatics facility, are future discussions with respect to the catalyst projects noted here. And so as these various projects advance in the time and at the pace, that future activity will dictate, we will be back before council. And at that point, any financing of those projects, implications of those projects, council will approve at a future date. So council today is not making a commitment. If the recommendations in this report are approved, council is not making a commitment to spend all the money and all the projects noted here. The individual projects will be brought forward at a future time, and council will have an opportunity to review and make decisions around that at that time.
Okay, good. So I think I'll just end. I don't have any more questions, but I do. Oh wait, there was one more question I had, and I'm not sure who can answer this. It might be Mr. Reid. So regarding attracting tourism and major events to our city, I have heard that our current Brandt Center, that there's limitations in terms of how many more events we can be attracting to our city. Can you provide a little more information exactly what that means? Because there's some people who think that we could just keep the current Brandt Center going. So can you explain that a little bit more through the chair?
It's actually, through the chair, it's a fantastic question, and I think it's a bit of a historical one. The Brandt Center was built in 1977. It was built for concerts and entertainment and events that were built in 1977. And for all of us that saw a concert in 1977, you probably recognize the stuff that they hang from the roof looked a lot different than it does at a concert now. And so from an entertainment standpoint, what we're seeing is touring artists are being built for venues that are 16,000 seats because they run across Canada, they run across the US, they play venues. And because of that, even though they scale down the rigging and the lighting package, when they come to the Brandt Center, it's all big and it's all heavy because it's designed for bigger buildings. And so, to give you an example, when Old Dominion played at the Brandt Center, they also played at every NHL arena across Canada. Just the stuff they fly from the ceiling is heavy. From a perspective of historical events, we're very pleased with the fact that we're going to get to host the Briar next year, one of the best places in Canada to do so. We are at the very maximum capacity or minimum capacity for seating for the Briar. 1977, we had lots of seats. Now we're actually finding accommodations to be able to host events like that. The Junos, which we're hosting in Edmonton this year, which we'd previously hosted, the building is too small to be able to host it. And so to be able to speak to it, the challenge with the Brandt Center is it's not that the infrastructure is wrong, it's actually it doesn't accommodate what modern entertainment, sport tourism, hosting, and recreation in some ways demand, certainly sport. And so the structure of the Brandt Center is actually really good. It's just, it's not able to receive what modern sport tourism as well as modern entertainment demand. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. So just a few comments to end, Mayor Masters.
You have 40 seconds. Go
40
ahead.
seconds. Okay, I was just going to say that I think that we need to, I heard a lot last night that an arena downtown is not the silver bullet to save downtown. But I do, and we did hear that there's a lot of smaller organizations that also do a lot to revitalize our downtown. So and we know Saskatoon has seen a development of their downtown even before they got the arena. So I support the ideas if it is going to actually bring us benefits, but I think that we have to think of everything else that's going to revitalize our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanachuk. Councillor Moll, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just curious about the one friendly amendment that was brought up, and it states adding the rail yards and reel into the picture. I'm a little confused. We just had a catalyst committee, we had an online survey, we had a scientific survey. In my opinion, the results of all those was, the greater downtown area, or downtown specifically. So We didn't really have mention of real in the picture as an overall choice by the majority. So I would like to see real removed from that and just see the yards and the downtown core. That's my opinion. So I don't know if we'd need to bring that forward as a vote for the amendment right now, because it's not going to be a friendly amendment.
Councillor Hawkins, would you accept that as a friendly amendment to remove real and keep it into the greater downtown area? Or do you want him to make a motion and we can debate that?
It's already part of the motion.
I think the friendly amendment is that you would remove real because it is part of the motion. He's looking to restrict it to the greater downtown area because it's been focused on downtown. There's been, the recommendation from the Catalyst Committee is for downtown. So he's wondering if...
The point of the friendly amendment was to broaden out to include the yards and to include real.
So
procedurally,
yes,
we have to deal with this. And then if he wants to move some other motion, he can move some other motion.
Agreed. So he would, Councillor Moll, you'll have to make a motion that in whatever item number that is, that real is removed as a potential site.
Yes, I guess I'll make that motion and I'll speak to it.
Would someone second this?
Well, there's a motion on the floor. We have to deal with, the clerk can help here, but there's a motion on the floor. We have to deal with the motion.
He told me I had to make a motion, so hang on a second. Councillor, clerk, go ahead.
Well, essentially, because we've had all these friendly amendments, the motion now is that the greater downtown and real are included. So in my opinion, because it was a friendly amendment, it's now just there. So Councillor Mold, in my opinion, has a right to make a motion to say, hey, take it out. If it had been passed as an amending motion, we would have had to reconsider it. But that step was skipped because it was accepted as a friendly amendment, so we take it as it's written. So I would suggest he can make a motion to remove it, have your discussion, and then debate, and then vote on it.
But surely there can't be two motions on the floor at one time.
It's amending motion. It's an amending motion because the motion's on the floor, so it's an amendment. And it's seconded by Councillor Nelson. You can get it loaded up. So I think whatever point that is, the idea of the motion on the floor is that it be considered that real as a perspective would be removed from the motion. That's the amendment. Councillor Moll, go ahead and speak to it.
Yeah, it's basically my remarks I was going to say in regards to the whole report. So after touring the city of London and Edmonton and seeing the surrounding their multi-purpose event centers downtown, it's no different than what was said with so many of the delegates that spoke. Saw new restaurants, new hotels, new commercial high-rises, and other businesses that surround the multi-purpose event centers downtown. Plain and simple, we heard 20-plus cities that have did this across Canada, building a downtown, and saw all this huge economic growth. And we absolutely need to revitalize our downtown or the surrounding area, being the yards. So that's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this? Councillor Nelson, go ahead.
Just to add to that, I mean, the survey, the Catalyst Committee, everything was based on downtown and the greater downtown. People answered questions based on downtown, the yards. Enough of broadening it out, and I just support this. We need to start just zoning in here and quit being so broad and stuff and figure out this is for downtown, this is for the greater downtown. That's what we need to talk about, not anywhere else.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Pindura.
Just a quick question. I had that comment on. Would this survey then be? Does this do anything to the survey? Because
No.
No. So
There was a request about whether or not it goes downtown. There was an answer specific to downtown, and it was a 30-34 split about actual downtown as described. So the survey still holds. He's wanting to remove real because the question was asked about downtown.
Okay. Okay.
All right, seeing no further questions. Councillor Mould, do you want to close off debate? On the amendment?
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. Clerks, can you call the vote on the amendment? Is the amendment up? Or, so the amendment is, I don't know where it is.
From the definition of the greater downtown area.
Yes, to remove real from the definition of the greater downtown. All right, thank you.
Councillor Zakidniak in favor.
Councilor Bresciani? Okay, all good, thank you.
Mayor Masters, with respect to the amending motion, it passes in a vote of 7-4. Those voting in favor are Councilors Bresciani, Nelson, Stevens, Mancinelli, Mole, Zakidniak, and yourself. Those voting against the motion are Councilors Hawkins, Findura, Stanachuk, and LeBlanc. The amendment 7-4.
Thank you. Councilor Nelson.
One question, we talked about, and I was trying to get I have so many residents calling and just stressed out and upset at me for things that I don't know because I wasn't here before. I got the answer about the swimming pool. This has been done a long time ago. The feasibility study's been done, so thank you very much. Now I can go back and say, yes, I have that information. The other information I've been asked is the feasibility study for the synthetic baseball diamond and soccer field. It was done by who, and is that report available to us? Because I don't know if I've gotten it or received it, and who did this feasibility study is my question through you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Reid?
Through the chair, thank you for that. The feasibility study was done as a partnership between FC Regina, the Red Sox, and I forget the name of the agency that oversees them, Living Skies Sports and Entertainment in partnership, the City of Regina's recreation team, and the Real team. It was supported by a design agency, and the feasibility study has been completed, although it has not been presented to City Council. It is included in the appendices for this document. It has not come back to you, so I think there is a need to likely schedule it so that you can hear from the committee.
Can you please, because I keep getting the phone calls and the emails, so that's all I need. Thank you, that's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Councilor Hawkins, you want to close off debate?
This is an important vote. This will shape our city. It's easy to find 1,000 reasons not to do something, but sometimes you just have to be courageous and build into the future, and that's what we're doing today.
Okay, that was quick. So we're voting on item 1, 2, and 3 in terms of the recommendations. Have I got that correct, Clerk?
Number 4,
Oh, good
number
Lord.
1 is to be separate.
Hang on.
So you're doing this one separate.
So-
1, number 4.
Oh, sorry.
This one separate. Part 4.
Which one are we voting on, 1 and 3? Thank you. On item number 1 and 3, because that's right, the Aquatic Center is always, holy smokes, guys. Number 1 and 3, the vote is up.
So there. Can you just hold on a minute?
1 minute, please.
Just want to make sure that this is what.
I apologize. We're voting on number 1, number 3. We're leaving number 4 out of this. That's how I'm going to say this. We are voting on everything except number 4.
Sorry, point
amended.
of order. Sorry, point of order.
Go ahead,
Can I
Councilor Steniak.
ask, can I ask for the trail system to be voted on separately?
Certainly. So we're voting on 3 and the balance of the recommendations right now, and we'll separate out number 1 and number 4. So number 3 and the balance of the recommendations coming from the Catalyst Committee. Clerk, start the vote.
It's okay, Amber, we'll figure it out.
You're voting on
Councillor
item number
Zakiniak.
3 and the balance of the recommendations.
It's Councillor Zakidniak, I'm opposed.
Thank you. Councilor Zakiniak is opposed. You have that? You're voting on item number 3 and the balance of the recommendations. What you're not voting on right now is number 1, a trail system, and you're not voting on a multipurpose event center. You're voting on the balance of the recommendations from the Catalyst Committee.
Mayor Masters, with respect to the vote on item number 3 and everything else, the vote is carried in a vote of 10-1. Those voting in favor are Councillors Hawkins, Bresciani, Nelson, Findura, Stadnichuk, Stevens, LeBlanc, Mancinelli, Mole, and yourself, Mayor Masters. Councillor Zakidniak is opposed. The vote is carried 10-1.
Thank you very much. The clerks will now vote on number 1, a connected non-vehicular vehicular trail system. Clerks, can you start the vote?
Zakidniak in favor.
Just one moment, just trying to get the vote loaded. Ms. Ackerman is going to post it again. Councillor Mole, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Findura, can you vote?
Mayor Masters, with respect to the vote on Part 1 of Recommendation 1, it is passed unanimously 11-0.
Thank you very much. We have, last item is item number 4, Multipurpose Event Center, the downtown core, Greater Downtown Core. Clerks, can you start the vote?
Zakidniak opposed.
Yes. Mayor Masters, with respect to the vote on Part 4 of number 1, the vote is carried 8-3. Those voting in favor are Councillors Hawkins, Bresciani, Nelson, Findura, Stadnichuk, Mancinelli, Mole, and yourself, Mayor Masters. Those voting against are Councillors Stevens, LeBlanc, and Zakidniak. The vote is carried 8-3.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Councillor Hawkins, seconded by Councillor Mancinelli. Any opposed? Carried.